Tonight we're standing at the edge of the wine-dark sea where moonlight trembles across black water, and the wind carries the scent of salt cedarwood and distant rain. Before you, hundreds of bronze-clad ships rest against the shore, their hulls creaking softly as if whispering to one another in the dark. Far behind them, the fires of fallen Troy still burn. Their smoke rises into the night sky like the final breath of a dying age. And somewhere beyond that smoke, beyond the islands and sacred harbours of Greece, beyond the marble temples and olive groves, lies a question that has survived for nearly 3,000 years. Why did Poseidon hate Odysseus so deeply? Why would a god of such immense power pursue one mortal man across the sea for 10 long years, breaking ships, drowning companions, and delaying homecoming with relentless cruelty? Tonight we are walking into that mystery together. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy journeys like this. And if you feel like it, tell us your location and local time in the comments. Somewhere perhaps another listener is drifting to sleep under the same stars. Now the night grows quiet. The sea is waiting. And the story begins. You walk along the shore of Troy in the final hours after victory. The war is over. 10 years of siege, blood hunger, and divine interference have ended in fire. The great city that once stood proud behind towering walls now groans beneath collapsing roofs and shattered gates. Marble statues lie broken in ash. Sacred altars are overturned. The scent of burned cedar mixes with iron and old blood. For the Greeks, victory should feel glorious. Yet peace does not arrive easily after long war. Even in triumph, men move like ghosts. Among them stands Odysseus, king of Ithaca. He's not the tallest warrior here, not the strongest either. He does not possess the overwhelming physical force of Achilles nor the towering presence of Ajax. His strength lies elsewhere. It lives behind the eyes, in stillness, in calculation, in silence before speech. The ancient Greeks admired many heroic qualities. Strength mattered, courage mattered, honour mattered. But there was another virtue they deeply respected, especially in stories about survival. They called it meti, cunning intelligence, strategic wisdom, adaptive cleverness. Odysseus embodied this almost perfectly. He was the man who could see 5 moves ahead while others saw only the present moment. The man who understood that war was won not merely by force, but by imagination. It was Odysseus, according to the most famous tradition, who conceived the wooden horse. Historians continue to debate how much of Troy reflects literal history and how much belongs to poetic memory. But in myth, the horse became the symbol of deceptive brilliance. While stronger men battered walls, Odysseus found a way around them. That brilliance made him legendary. It also made him dangerous. Because intelligence carries a shadow. A clever mind can become proud. A strategic thinker can begin believing he stands above ordinary law, even divine law. And that is where the first quiet warning enters the story. As Greek soldiers gather treasure and prepare ships for departure, priests study the flames of sacrifice. Bulls are offered, wine is poured, barley is scattered upon sacred fire. The gods must be honoured before sailing. No Greek captain would willingly ignore such rituals. The sea belonged to powers older than kings. Every sailor understood this. The most feared among them was Poseidon. To modern minds, Poseidon is often reduced to a simple image, a muscular god with a trident ruling the ocean. But to the ancient Greeks, Poseidon was far more unsettling than that. He was not merely lord of waves. He governed instability itself. He ruled storms that shattered fleets. He ruled earthquakes that split mountains. He ruled horses, creatures of speed and power. He ruled the violent collision between order and chaos. The Greeks gave him titles full of awe and fear. Earthshaker, Tamer of horses, holder of the earth. Imagine what this meant to people whose lives depended on fragile wooden ships. A farmer fears drought. A shepherd fears wolves. But a sailor fears Poseidon, because at sea there is nowhere to run. Only water in every direction. Only sky. Only whatever mood the god has chosen. You can almost hear the priests now chanting near sacred flame while sparks rise into darkness. Their voices are low, rhythmic, ancient. They ask for safe passage, favourable winds, mercy. Mercy from a god not known for softness. And yet on this night Poseidon is not visibly angry. That is important. Because hatred does not always begin with thunder. Sometimes it begins with smaller fractures. Quiet insults, hidden arrogance, a choice that seems harmless when first made. Some researchers believe ancient Greek audiences were especially sensitive to this theme. In myth, catastrophe rarely appears without warning. Pride comes first. Disrespect comes first. Excess comes first. Disaster merely follows. The Greeks had a word for destructive arrogance: hubris. Hubris was more than pride. It was the dangerous crossing of limits, the moment a mortal forgot what separated human beings from gods. And if there is one flaw buried deep within Odysseus even before his voyage begins, it is this. He trusts his own mind almost completely. Not blindly, not foolishly, but enough to believe he can navigate any danger. Enough to think intelligence can solve every problem. Enough to sometimes forget that divine beings do not obey mortal logic. Far across the sea on the small island kingdom of Ithaca, another fire burns tonight. There waits Penelope, his wife. Patient, faithful, intelligent in ways that mirror her husband. She waits in palace halls lit by oil lamps. She waits while servants whisper. She waits while their son Telemachus grows toward manhood without his father. For 10 years she has lived between hope and grief. Ancient audiences understood this pain intimately. The Greek ideal of Nostos homecoming was sacred. War mattered. Honour mattered. But returning home mattered just as much. A hero who cannot return remains unfinished. Odysseus longs for home with extraordinary intensity. This longing defines him as much as his cleverness. He wants Ithaca. He wants Penelope. He wants the smell of olive trees after rain. He wants stone floors warmed by afternoon sun. He wants his own bed carved from living wood. And yet destiny already stirs. Not all ships leaving Troy will reach home. Some tradition preserves strange omens on the night before departure. A bird circling against the wind. A sacrificial flame bending unnaturally toward the sea. A sudden silence among gulls. Historians continue to debate whether these omens were later additions by poets seeking dramatic foreshadowing. No one can know with certainty, but ancient listeners would understand their meaning immediately. Nature speaks. The gods answer through signs, and wise men pay attention. Did Odysseus notice? Some say yes. Some say he saw every sign and trusted himself anyway. That uncertainty lingers. Soon the ships will launch. Soon winds will rise. Soon islands of wonder and terror will emerge from mist. Soon a cave will open beneath a cliff. Soon a Cyclops will scream to the heavens. And soon across crashing waves a single name will be shouted with fatal pride. That name will awaken divine hatred. That name will condemn a voyage. That name will make Poseidon remember. For now, though, the sea remains calm. Almost too calm. The stars burn bright above black water. Torches flicker across the beach. Bronze armour glows in orange light. Rope strains softly against wooden masts. Somewhere a sailor dreams of home. Somewhere else another dreams of drowning. And beneath the surface, far below moonlit waves where sunlight never reaches, and silence presses like stone, an immortal power rests in deep halls of coral and shadow. Whether he already senses what is coming, no mortal can say. But one thing feels certain. The sea remembers everything, and it is patient. Dawn comes slowly over the Aegean. First the horizon turns silver, then pale gold, and at last the sun lifts itself above the water, like molten bronze. You stand beside the departing fleet as sails rise one after another, catching the morning wind. Oars dip into the sea in disciplined rhythm. Hulls slide from shore. Troy begins to shrink behind them, becoming smoke, then shadow, then memory. For many men aboard these ships, this moment feels like rebirth. The war is over. Home lies ahead. Wives wait. Children wait. Old fathers wait beside vineyard walls and weathered doorways. But if you listen closely beneath the cries of gulls and the slap of waves against wood, another feeling lives there too: unease. Odysseus stands at the stern of his ship, one hand resting on polished timber, worn smooth by salt and years. His face is turned westward toward Ithaca, but his thoughts are not simple. Victory has not brought peace to his mind. Men like Odysseus rarely become still so easily. His thoughts move constantly, measuring risk, reading wind, calculating routes, weighing character. Even now, surrounded by familiar companions, he observes. Who is disciplined? Who is reckless? Who has become soft after triumph? This is part of what makes him exceptional. He sees patterns where others see moments, and yet patterns can deceive. The Greeks loved this contradiction in Odysseus. He was brilliant precisely because he was human. His greatest strength could become his greatest flaw. Intelligence can sharpen judgment, but it can also feed control. The more a man solves, the more he may believe everything is solvable. Even fate, even gods. A breeze strengthens, carrying the scent of salt spray and wet rope. Bronze fittings gleam in sunlight. Sailcloth snaps overhead. Around Odysseus, his crew begins to relax. Laughter returns. Someone sings an old island song. Someone else speaks of wine waiting at home. One man describes his daughter barely walking when he left, now nearly grown. Another wonders if his dog still remembers him. Homecoming changes shape in conversation. It becomes real, reachable, touchably close. Odysseus allows himself one quiet image: Penelope in the palace hall light from oil lamps resting against her dark hair. He imagines Telemachus, taller now perhaps, already learning to hold spear and shield. The thought softens something in him, but only briefly, because memory pulls him elsewhere, to childhood, to Ithaca itself. Unlike grand kingdoms such as Sparta or mighty Mycenae, Ithaca is rugged, stony, almost severe. Its hills rise sharply, its harbours are narrow. Olive trees cling stubbornly to difficult soil. It is not the richest island, not the most beautiful perhaps. Yet ancient poets made this meaningful. Odysseus does not long for perfection, he longs for what is his. That longing matters, because desire reveals truth. A man offered glory, but yearning for home tells you something about his soul. Still, there is another truth inside Odysseus. He enjoys being admired, not vain in the shallow sense, not boastful without cause, but he knows his worth. He knows men speak his name with respect. He knows kings once turned to him for counsel when siege dragged into hopelessness. This subtle pride sleeps beneath discipline like embers beneath ash. Not yet flame, but present. Historians and classicists often note that Greek heroes were rarely moral in modern terms. They were magnificent and flawed at once. The Greeks did not seek spotless heroes. They preferred greatness complicated by weakness. That made myth feel human. Odysseus embodies this beautifully. He is loving yet manipulative, loyal yet deceptive, wise yet prideful. He survives because he bends. He suffers because sometimes he refuses to bend enough. As the fleet crosses open water, rituals continue. Sailors pour small offerings overboard. Wine darkens the sea. Oil glistens briefly before disappearing into waves. A prayer rises to the Olympians, to Zeus for justice, to Athena for guidance, and to Poseidon for calm waters. Odysseus says the words, but does he feel reverence? That question remains strangely difficult. Ancient traditions differ. Some portray him as pious and respectful. Others suggest his devotion was practical, not deeply humble. Another interpretation survives among later commentators. Odysseus honoured gods sincerely but trusted his own cleverness too much when divine rules felt inconvenient. If true, that tension explains much. Because Poseidon was not merely angered by offence, he was angered by mortal defiance, by men who treated divine boundaries as negotiable. The sea grows rougher by afternoon. Nothing dangerous yet, just movement. Long rolling swells lifting the ships and lowering them again. Sunlight scatters in dazzling shards across the surface. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Up, down, up, down. And then something unusual happens. A gull appears. At first this means nothing. Birds follow ships often, but this bird does not behave normally. It circles Odysseus's vessel 3 times low enough for sailors to see its pale wings flashing white in sunlight. Then it cries once sharply, and drops a fish onto the deck. The fish lands near Odysseus's feet, still alive, flopping, silver scales flashing. The crew falls silent. In ancient Greece, signs involving birds mattered deeply. Augury, the interpretation of bird behaviour, shaped political and military decisions for centuries. Direction number sound prey, timing everything could carry meaning. A helmsman whispers first. An omen. Another sailor touches an amulet hanging at his throat. Odysseus looks down at the fish. Alive, struggling, gasping. Its body twists desperately against wood. A strange stillness settles over him. Some researchers believe this image preserved in scattered retellings symbolized Odysseus himself, a creature of one realm dragged unwillingly into another, a being suffocating far from where he belongs. If so, the omen feels chilling, but interpretation is never simple. The gull circles once more, then vanishes into sky. No explanation comes, only silence. One sailor asks if sacrifice should be made. Odysseus studies the horizon, then calmly orders the fish thrown back. No ritual, no priest, no delay. The moment passes. Conversation resumes, yet something subtle has shifted. Not because disaster follows immediately, but because a pattern begins, a sign appears. It is noticed, then dismissed. This matters more than it seems. Far beneath the surface, currents move around underwater cliffs and ancient trenches. The Greeks imagined the sea not as empty space but as a living kingdom filled with divine presence. Nymphs danced in hidden caves. Sea spirits rode foam. Monsters slept in abyssal dark. And deep below all mortal roots stood the halls of Poseidon, built of gold coral and impossible stone. There the god's awareness moved with tides, not constant attention, but vast perception. A disturbance here, a prayer there, a broken oath elsewhere. The divine did not observe as humans do. It sensed patterns of reverence and insult, storm and silence, fear and arrogance. And somewhere in those patterns Odysseus continued west, unaware of how fragile calm could be. Night falls. Stars bloom overhead in impossible number. Without city lights, the heavens feel overwhelming. The Milky Way stretches across darkness like sacred dust spilled by unseen hands. Sailors take turns at watch. Others sleep wrapped in cloaks rocked by waves. Odysseus remains awake longer. The fish omen returns to mind, not because he fears easily, because he thinks. Always. He replays details. 3 circles. Single cry, living fish, meaning, coincidence, warning, gift. He almost smiles at himself. Even now he seeks solutions, meanings, answers. That perhaps is his nature, to interrogate mystery rather than submit to it. At last he sleeps, and just before dawn he dreams. He stands alone on a shore of black sand. No ship, no crew, only endless water. Far offshore, something massive moves beneath the surface, too large to fully see. A shadow, a shape. Then a voice rises, not loud but impossibly deep, not spoken through air, spoken through water, through bone, through the ground beneath his feet. One sentence: you will be broken before you bend. Odysseus wakes instantly, breathing hard, sweat cold on skin despite the morning chill. The sun has not yet risen. The sea is calm, too calm. No one else heard anything. No one else stirs. He says nothing, but the dream remains. And somewhere ahead, hidden beyond mist and islands, waits the first true test of the man called Odysseus. The sea has given its warning. Whether he understands it is another matter. Morning deepens into day, and the fleet continues west across the glittering skin of the sea. The dream lingers inside Odysseus like cold metal. You will be broken before you bend. The words refuse to fade. He tells no one. Kings learn early that fear spreads faster than fire in dry grass. A troubled captain creates troubled men, so he keeps the omen locked behind calm eyes and measured commands. Yet silence does not erase meaning, sometimes it sharpens it. For several days the voyage feels almost gentle. Favourable winds fill the sails. Dolphins occasionally surface beside the hull, their smooth backs flashing silver beneath sunlight. Sailors laugh more freely now. Bread is shared. Water jars pass from hand to hand. Songs rise during the quieter hours. You can hear the rhythm of oars, the creak of leather bindings, the faint clink of bronze weapons stored along the deck. Life at sea becomes ritual. Wake. Watch the horizon, adjust sail, pray, eat, wait. Ancient Greek sailors respected routine because routine created order against chaos. The sea punished carelessness. Rope had to be checked, mast joints inspected, hull seams watched for seepage. Even small negligence could become catastrophe. In this world, discipline was survival. Odysseus understands this better than most. He walks the ship constantly observing details others miss. A fraying knot, a tired rower, a loose spear. Nothing escapes him for long. His crew respects him because he sees what matters. But leadership carries another burden. Men also watch their leader. They learn from what he tolerates. They mirror what he values. This is why the next decision matters so much. Land appears near midday on the horizon. At first it is only a faint dark line between sea and sky. Then cliffs emerge, then hills, then smoke. Human settlement, civilization, opportunity. The island belongs to the Cicons, a Thracian people living near the city of Ismarus. Their harbour sits beneath rising hills where scrub grass bends in coastal wind. Stone dwellings cluster near defensive walls. Fishing boats bob near shore. From a distance nothing seems extraordinary. Yet war changes men. 10 years at Troy has shaped these Greeks into something harder, more dangerous, more accustomed to taking. Ancient epics rarely hide this truth. Heroes were not always noble by modern standards. Raiding enemy settlements for supplies, wealth, or captives was deeply woven into Bronze Age warfare. Victory often extended beyond battlefields into plunder, and so temptation arrives. Food, wine, livestock, treasure. Easy gain before home. Odysseus orders an attack. The landing is swift and brutal. Bronze flashes under sunlight. Shields collide, spears strike. The sounds shatter the quiet coast, shouting men panicked, animals splintering doors, women crying out, boots pounding stone streets. Smoke rises from broken storage buildings. The scent of burning grain fills the air. You may feel discomfort here. That discomfort matters, because myth does not always flatter heroes. Odysseus wins. The Cicons are overwhelmed. Their stores are taken, their goods seized, their homes pillaged. Victory comes quickly. And then the true test begins. Odysseus gives the order to leave. That order should have saved them. He understands the risk immediately. Coastal raids are dangerous precisely because survivors run inland. Reinforcements come, counterattack follows, delay becomes deadly. So he commands withdrawal, but his men resist. That detail reveals something painful. Even great leaders cannot fully govern desire. The crew wants more. More wine, more meat, more spoils, more celebration. They laugh, feast and drink on the shore while the sun lowers. This is the first major fracture between Odysseus and his men. He sees danger. They see abundance. He warns. They ignore. Some scholars view this episode as the first clear signal that Odysseus' suffering will not come only from gods or monsters. Human weakness travels with him. Greed, suspicion, fear, hunger. These companions prove just as dangerous as storms. The Greeks had a deep suspicion of excess. Moderation was wisdom. Appetite without limit invited disaster. And once again, warning is dismissed. The pattern returns. Omen. Warning. Disregard. Consequences. As evening approaches, dust appears in the distance. At first faint, then thicker, then unmistakable. Riders. Warriors! Many. The surviving Cicons have summoned reinforcements from inland settlements. men hardened by horseback warfare and open terrain. They descend toward the shore in organized force shields, shining spears raised. Too late. Odysseus sees them and instantly understands. Disaster. He shouts commands. Form ranks. Recall stragglers. To the ships. Now! Panic replaces drunken confidence. Men scramble across sand. Armour half fastened. Weapons dropped, then recovered. Some are slow from wine. Others burden themselves with stolen goods. The counterattack hits like iron rain. Spears crash into Greek shields. Arrows whistle through salt air. Horses scream. Sand erupts under pounding hooves. Bronze strikes bronze with violent ringing force. Men fall. Blood darkens the shore. Odysseus fights fiercely, rallying retreat, forcing discipline where chaos blooms. His voice cuts through battle like a blade. Move. Hold. Fall back. Board. Survive. At last the ships push free from shore, but not untouched. The cost is severe. Ancient tradition records 6 men lost from each ship. 6, a number small enough to count, large enough to haunt. Names once spoken around campfires now vanish into sea memory. The ships drift farther from shore as twilight settles. No cheers now, no songs, only exhaustion, only grief, only shame. Bodies wrapped in cloth lie near the sterns. Salt wind moves across still faces. The smell of blood mingles with seawater and spilled wine. Odysseus stands silent. He was right. They should have left. He warned them. And yet, he also ordered the raid. This complexity matters. Blame is not simple. He sees farther than his men, yes, but he still chose violence when caution was possible. This is the burden of leadership in Greek myth. Wisdom does not erase guilt. Sometimes both coexist. Night falls heavily. Clouds gather. No stars. No moon. Just dark sea and darker sky. The mood aboard the ship changes. Even hardened warriors become quieter after sudden loss. Death at sea feels especially lonely. No grave, no stone marker, only water. Ancient Greeks feared this deeply. Proper burial mattered, memory mattered, ritual mattered. To vanish without grave threatened something profound, the continuity between living and dead. A sailor begins whispering prayers for fallen companions. Others join. Odysseus remains apart, watching waves, thinking. The dream returns. You'll be broken before you bend. Broken? He understands something now. The sea is not merely distance between destinations. It is an arena of correction. Each mistake carries consequence. Each flaw becomes visible, and somewhere in that realization another quieter question forms. Will he learn, or only endure? That question may be the deepest mystery of Odysseus. Not whether he survives, but whether suffering transforms him. Wind rises after midnight. Low at first, then colder. It moves across the water with unsettling steadiness, carrying distant thunder. No lightning yet, only sound. Far away, rolling. Ancient sailors knew such sounds well. Storms often announced themselves long before arrival. A lookout stiffens. Another points west. Dark mass on horizon. Cloud wall. Too symmetrical to ignore. Odysseus lifts his gaze. There it is. A storm forming. Not natural looking. Not chaotic enough. Almost deliberate. The air changes temperature suddenly. Gooseflesh rises across exposed skin. Rope strains harder. Sailcloth snaps. And for one impossible second as a wave lifts the ship, Odysseus thinks he sees something within the storm. A towering silhouette. Broad shoulders. Raised arm. 3-pronged shape in hand. Then darkness swallows it. Gone. Perhaps illusion. Perhaps moonless imagination. Perhaps something else. No one can say. Ancient storytellers often left such moments unresolved. Because uncertainty nourishes fear, and because gods rarely reveal themselves clearly to mortals. The thunder sounds again. Closer now. The sea begins to rise. The voyage home is only beginning, and far ahead beyond storm and hunger and strange islands a cave waits in darkness. Inside it a single eye will one day open, and Poseidon's hatred will truly begin. The storm does not strike all at once. It gathers like a thought in the mind of a god. First comes the silence, strange and complete, as if the sea itself has drawn breath and chosen not to release it. Then the gulls vanish. The air thickens. Sailors stop speaking, not because anyone commands them, but because every man aboard feels the same pressure settling over his skin. You stand beside Odysseus beneath a sky bruised purple and black, watching the horizon disappear behind curtains of rain. Somewhere behind you, Troy is no longer visible, yet its smoke still seems to cling to everything. It is in the cloaks, in the hair, in the wood of the ships, in memory. The Greeks have escaped the burning city, but they have not escaped what the burning city has made of them. Odysseus orders the sail reduced. Men move quickly, though grief from the Sicone still weighs on them. 6 men from each ship are gone, and their absence feels like empty benches, unused oars, half-finished songs. The sea begins to rise under the hull, lifting it sharply, then dropping it into troughs where water slaps the planks with hollow force. Thunder rolls closer. Bronze weapons slide and clatter. Someone curses softly, then remembers himself and makes a prayer instead. To the ancient Greeks, storms were never only weather. A storm could be wind and cloud, yes, but it could also be judgment. It could be a god's mood crossing the mortal world. It could be a message written in rain. And on this night, as the first hard drops strike the deck, even the boldest sailors feel that some message is being delivered. Odysseus grips a rope, his cloak snapping around him. He searches the clouds for pattern, for meaning, for something a human mind can grasp. He's still doing what he always does, reading danger, interpreting motion, trying to turn chaos into strategy. But the storm refuses to become simple. Lightning opens the sky. For an instant, the whole sea turns white. You see faces pale with fear, hands slick on ropes, and mouths open in shouts swallowed by wind. Then darkness returns thicker than before. The ships scatter, not fully, not yet, but enough for lanterns to drift apart across the black water like dying stars. Somewhere another captain calls out, but the answer is lost. Odysseus shouts orders, and his voice remains steady. That steadiness saves men. It gives shape to panic. Yet under his calm the dream speaks again. You will be broken before you bend. Was this the breaking, or only the first tap of the hammer no one could know? Ancient traditions tell different versions of the storm after Troy. Some place divine anger here. Some make it ordinary weather magnified by fear. Some later poets suggest the Greeks, swollen with victory, had failed to honour every god properly before sailing. Historians continue to debate how these layers developed through oral storytelling, but for a listener in the ancient world the lesson would be clear. No victory is complete until the gods permit the journey home. Rain comes harder. It runs down Odysseus's face like cold fingers. Salt spray burns the eyes. The deck tilts. A jar breaks. Wine spills and mixes with seawater, turning briefly dark at his feet before washing away. The smell of wet wool, pitch, sweat, and storm fills the ship. Men bail water with bowls and helmets. Oars are pulled in. Ropes bite into palms. The whole vessel becomes a living creature fighting not to be swallowed. Through the chaos, one old sailor near the mast begins chanting to Poseidon. Not loudly, almost privately. Earthshaker, spare us. Lord of the deep, remember sacrifice. Holder of storms, turn your face away. The words pass from man to man. Soon several voices join him. Odysseus hears them. He does not stop them. He even lowers his head briefly toward the sea, but whether humility enters his heart in that moment remains uncertain. Another interpretation suggests he prays because prayer is useful, because fear makes all men practical. And perhaps that is unfair. Perhaps he does feel awe. Perhaps he does understand that his mind, brilliant as it is, cannot command the sea. Myth leaves room for both possibilities, and in that room Odysseus becomes more human. The storm drives them for days. Time loses shape. Daylight is grey. Night is black. The fleet no longer follows chosen routes. It is push-dragged, scattered by wind. Islands vanish behind rain. Stars remain hidden. Without stars, navigation becomes guesswork. For Greeks who sailed by coastline, sky, and memory, this was terror. To be far from land was dangerous enough. To be far from land without the heavens was worse. Odysseus sleeps little. When he does, he dreams in fragments, a fish gasping on dry wood, a gull circling 3 times, a black shore, a voice beneath water. Then another image appears new and unsettling, a great eye opening in darkness, not human, not animal, round, enormous, patient. He wakes before it blinks. The dream leaves him colder than rain. What does one eye mean? A watchful god, a monster. The loss of ordinary vision. Ancient audiences hearing this might lean closer in the firelight, knowing the Cyclops lies ahead, yet feeling the dread of prophecy before its fulfillment. That is the power of myth. It makes destiny seem both surprising and inevitable. On the 3rd night, lightning strikes so close that the mast glows blue for a heartbeat. Men cry out. One falls to his knees, another promises a ram to Poseidon if he lives to see Ithaca. Odysseus looks over the side and sees the sea churning below black water veined with white foam. For an instant he imagines halls beneath the waves vast and silent, where a god sits among horses with bronze hooves and sea nymphs with wet hair. Poseidon has not yet named him enemy, not fully, not personally, but the realm is already reminding him who rules here. This distinction matters. Poseidon's hatred of Odysseus will later become intimate, sharpened by the pain of Polyphemus. Yet before hatred comes authority. Before revenge comes territory. Odysseus is a king, yes, but at sea he's a guest in another king's kingdom, and guests must know how to behave. The storm finally breaks near dawn. Clouds tear open in the east and pale light spreads across exhausted faces. Rain softens, wind weakens. The sea, though still restless, no longer feels murderous. Men stare at one another as survivors do, amazed by bodies still breathing. One by one, the ships take account of damage. Some hulls are cracked, stores are soaked, a few oars are lost. Men are bruised, cut, hollow-eyed, yet Odysseus's ship remains afloat. This should feel like mercy. Instead, it feels like warning. A headland appears through lifting mist, low coast, quiet shore, a place of strange stillness after violence. The crew whispers in relief. Any land seems welcome after such a storm. Any harbour seems kind when men are cold, hungry and shaken. But Odysseus does not smile. The dream of the single eye returns. He cannot explain it. He cannot dismiss it either. Mist curls over the water like breath from the mouth of the underworld. The shore waits without sound. No dogs barking, no human voices, no smoke from cooking fires. Only wind moving through unseen grasses and waves folding gently against pale sand. Somewhere inland, perhaps a flower grows that can make men forget everything they love. Somewhere beyond that, a cave waits beneath a cliff. But for now the ships drift toward unknown coast, and the men look forward with desperate hope. They do not yet understand that storms can be survived, and still lead you deeper into danger. The shore ahead looks peaceful at first, and that is the danger of it. Morning light spreads across low hills and pale sand touching the wet hulls of the ships as they slide toward land. After days of storm, even silence feels like kindness. The men step onto the beach, slowly, knees unsteady from the sea hands touching earth as if greeting an old friend. You feel the cold grain of sand beneath bare feet. The smell of seaweed and rain-soaked grass, the strange relief of standing somewhere that does not rise and fall beneath you. Yet the dream still lives inside Odysseus. A single eye opening in darkness. A warning not yet understood. He studies the shore, the hills, the distant smoke of settlement, and for one quiet moment he hesitates. That hesitation matters because it shows you the divided man within him. One part of Odysseus longs only to survive and return home. Another part remains a warrior fresh from Troy, trained by 10 years of siege to see coastlines as targets and abundance as something to be seized. In some ancient traditions, the raid on the Cicones comes immediately after Troy before the Great Storm. In others, the order of memory feels less fixed, shaped by singers who carried the tale from hall to hall. Scholars remain divided on how older oral versions arranged these early wanderings, but the meaning remains steady. The first wound of the journey is not made by a monster, it is made by human appetite. The Cicones live near Ismarus, where vines grow under the wind and houses cluster close to the shore. You can imagine their morning before the ships arrive, smoke curling from hearths, women grinding grain, fishermen mending nets, children running between doorways, old men sitting in sun-warmed courtyards. Then bronze comes from the sea. Odysseus leads the attack with terrible efficiency. Spears flash, doors break, goats scatter through dusty lanes, wine jars are dragged from storage rooms. The scent of spilled grain, smoke and fear fills the air. The Greeks have not yet remembered how to be peaceful men. War has followed them homeward like a second shadow. To ancient audiences, this would not have seemed unusual, in the way it seems to you now. Raiding plunder and the seizure of goods belong to the brutal world of heroic warfare. Yet the poem does not allow comfort. It lets you feel the moral weight. Odysseus wins, but winning does not cleanse the choice. He orders his men back to the ships quickly. This is wisdom arriving after violence. He knows the coast is not safe. He knows survivors will flee inland and return with allies. His voice cuts through the noise with authority, telling them to leave the wine, leave the meat, leave what cannot be carried, and launch before sunset. But the men do not obey. Their hunger is larger than discipline. They've suffered too long. 10 years outside Troy, days at sea, storm fear, exhaustion. Now wine is in their hands and roasted meat is on the fires. Laughter rises, armour is loosened, stolen cups gleam in the sun. One man says the gods have rewarded them, another says no enemy will come before night. A third, already drunk, raises a bowl toward the sea and mocks the waves that fail to drown him. Odysseus hears it and turns sharply. There is the smallest change in the air, not thunder, not wind, something subtler like a sacred fire bending without cause. A warning. He remembers the gull, the living fish, the dream of being broken. He warns them again, leave now. But a king's wisdom is powerless when men no longer wish to be saved. Late in the afternoon, dust appears beyond the hills. At first it is a faint brown veil, then it thickens, then spear points catch the sun. The Cicones return with inland warriors, many more than before men, trained to fight on open ground, men who know their land and have rage in their lungs. The beach becomes chaos. Greek laughter dies. Cups fall, meat burns unattended. Odysseus shouts for formation and the survivors of Troy become soldiers again, but too late and too slowly. The battle is fierce and ugly. You hear bronze on bronze, the snap of spear shafts, the wet sound of bodies falling into sand. The sea lies behind them, bright and indifferent. The ships are close, but suddenly they seem impossibly far. Odysseus fights not for glory now, but for retreat. This is one of the first transformations of the voyage. At Troy he fought to win, here he fights to escape. He pulls men back in groups, orders shields, locked commands rowers to push hulls into the surf. Around him, companions fall. 6 from each ship, tradition says, and the number has the rhythm of ritual lament. 6 benches emptied, 6 voices silenced, 6 households darkened far away. At last the fleet breaks free, dragging itself from the shore like a wounded animal. The Cicones remain behind among smoke and bodies. The Greeks row hard until arrows no longer reach them. Only then does the sound change. No more shouting, no more battle. Just oars striking water and men breathing as if each breath has been borrowed. Odysseus looks back at the coast. He knows he warned them. He knows they disobeyed. Yet he also knows he led them there. Leadership in myth is never pure. The captain carries blame even when others fail him. This is why the old stories endure. They understand that guilt can have more than one owner. As evening falls, the dead are mourned as best they can. There is no proper burial, no mound, no stone. The Greeks call the names of the lost 3 times, a ritual cry across darkening water, hoping the souls hear and follow. Wine is poured into the sea. The liquid spreads like a bruise beneath the setting sun. A priest among them studies the surface and grows pale. The wine does not disperse normally. For a moment it forms a dark ring around the ship. Then the ring breaks apart. A circle, someone whispers. An eye, another says. Odysseus says nothing. Mystery gathers around the omen. Was it Poseidon's attention? Was it only current and shadow? Ancient listeners would not need certainty. They would feel the tightening thread. Night arrives cold. The men wrap themselves in damp cloaks. The smell of blood still clings to the deck. Somewhere in the darkness, waves strike the hull softly, almost like knuckles tapping on wood. Odysseus stands awake long after the others sleep. He thinks of Ithaca, of Penelope, of Telemachus, and of the households now wounded because of decisions made on a foreign shore. He has not yet offended Poseidon in the way that will define the journey, but he has already entered the moral weather of the sea. Every act is seen. Every appetite has consequence. Every ignored warning returns in another form. Before dawn he sleeps at last and dreams again. This time he sees a feast laid out beneath a cliff. Bowls of wine, white cheese, lambs penned in shadow. A doorway blocked by stone. Then one enormous eye opens above him, wet and bright in firelight. A voice, not the deep water voice from before, but rougher, closer, almost wounded, asks, "Who are you?" Odysseus wakes with his hand on his sword. The sea is calm, the crew is sleeping. Ahead, somewhere beyond the dark horizon, a strange land waits. And with it waits the question that will decide everything. Dawn rises pale and quiet, as if the sea wishes to conceal everything that happened the day before. The blood has been washed from the deck. The wine stains have faded. Only memory remains, and memory is often the heavier burden. Odysseus stands at the bow while mist drifts low over the water, soft as breath across polished bronze. His dream still troubles him, the feast beneath the cliff, the cheese, the stone doorway, the single eye. Most dreams dissolve under morning light, but this one remains strangely solid, like an object placed inside his mind by another hand. He says nothing of it, yet silence has become part of his character now. He speaks when needed, but increasingly keeps his deepest fears hidden. This too matters. Leaders who conceal too much eventually carry weight alone. The wind turns favourable again, gentle but steady, pushing the ship southward across open water. Days pass with little incident. The sea grows calmer, almost unnaturally so. No storms, no hostile sails, no jagged reefs. Only long silver water under bright skies and star-filled nights. After loss and battle, such peace feels suspicious. Ancient Greek audiences understood this instinctively. In myth, peace often carries its own danger. Not every threat arrives roaring. Some arrive whispering. By the 5th day, land appears again. Low, green, quiet. No towering cliffs, no fortified harbour, no smoke of war. Just a soft coastline lined with strange flowering plants moving in warm breeze. The scent reaches the ships before landfall, sweet thick, almost intoxicating, not like olive blossom, not like thyme or cedar, something softer, warmer, dreamlike. Even the crew notices. One sailor laughs and says the island smells sweeter than a wedding feast. Another says it smells like childhood. That answer makes several men fall silent. Childhood? Home before war. Already something strange is happening. Odysseus narrows his eyes towards shore. No armed defenders. No visible settlements. No livestock. No noise. Only flowers bending under sunlight. The stillness unsettles him. Ancient traditions call this place the land of the lotus eaters. Exactly where such a place belonged in real geography remains unknown. Some researchers have linked the story to North African coastal regions, where narcotic or euphoric plants existed. Others argue the location was never meant to be literal. Another interpretation suggests the lotus symbolizes not a plant at all, but a psychological truth, forgetfulness, surrender, the temptation to stop struggling. That interpretation becomes powerful once you step ashore. The beach is warm beneath bare feet. Fine sand clings to wet skin. Gentle surf folds in slow rhythm. There are no walls here, no defensive towers, no weapons. Instead, figures emerge from among flowering groves, calm people with relaxed faces, unhurried movements and strangely distant eyes. They do not threaten the Greeks, they do not fear them either. They simply observe. Their hospitality feels ancient, quiet, almost sacred. The Greeks valued hospitality deeply. They called it xenia, the sacred relationship between host and guest, protected by Zeus himself. To reject a guest cruelly invited divine anger. To abuse hospitality invited shame. So when the lotus eaters offer food, the gesture feels familiar, safe, civilized. Odysseus hesitates. Not because the offering appears poisoned, because something about their faces feels wrong. Too peaceful, too empty, no urgency, no longing, no ambition, no hunger, as if every sharp edge of human desire has been smoothed away. He chooses caution. He sends a small scouting party inland, trusted men, disciplined men instructed to observe and return quickly. Watch, speak politely, eat nothing without reason, return before sunset. The men nod and go. At first nothing seems unusual. The scouts walk through flowering groves beneath warm sunlight. Bees hum lazily. The air smells impossibly sweet. The lotus eaters welcome them gently and offer pale golden fruit from woven baskets. No threats, no force, only invitation. Take, taste, rest. And here the danger reveals itself. Not violence, choice. The scouts eat. One bite, then another. The transformation is subtle. No collapse, no madness, no immediate stupor. Instead, tension drains. Shoulders loosen. Breathing slows. The sharp ache of longing begins to fade. Ithaca becomes less vivid. Wives less urgent. Children less immediate. Home less necessary. This is why the lotus is terrifying. It does not destroy memory entirely. It destroys attachment. You still remember home. You simply stop caring enough to return. Ancient Greek listeners would have felt the horror instantly. The goal of Odysseus's entire journey is nostos, homecoming. To abandon that desire is to abandon identity itself. Home is not just location. It is duty, love, legacy, name. Without longing, the hero's journey ends in spiritual death. Hours pass. The scouts do not return. Odysseus waits. Sun lowers. Still nothing. Concern becomes alarm. He arms himself and leads men inland. The grove feels unreal. Golden light filters through leaves. Sweet scent thickens with every step. Birds sing softly overhead. The place feels less like earth and more like dream. Then he finds them. His men lie reclining among flowers. Not injured, not restrained, smiling. One of them looks up at Odysseus and laughs softly. Not mocking, not joyful, just distant, peaceful. Why hurry, he asks. The words strike Odysseus harder than a spear. Why hurry? Because your family waits. Because years are passing. Because life is short. Because memory matters. Because promises matter. Yet his men do not feel this anymore. One reaches for lotus fruit again. Another murmurs that Ithaca is difficult, rocky, poor. Here there is warmth, food, sleep. No burden, no struggle, no grief. Odysseus feels something cold inside him. Not fear of monsters, fear of forgetting, because even he feels the island working. The scent softens thought. The stillness slows urgency. A dangerous whisper enters the mind. Rest. Just for a while. No storms here. No war. No responsibility. Sleep. And perhaps this is the first truly personal trial of Odysseus. Not brute survival. Not battle, identity. Who are you when struggle becomes optional? Historians often note that this episode feels psychologically modern. The Lotus resembles sedation addiction escapism, even depression states where action loses meaning. The myth understands something profound about human nature. Pain hurts, but numbness can destroy purpose more quietly. Odysseus resists, not easily, but decisively. His voice hardens. He orders his men seized. They protest. Shockingly, they fight him. Not with rage, with pleading. Leave us. Stay. Why return? Those words wound him, because they reveal how deep the Lotus reaches. He commands his crew to drag them physically back to the ships. The scouts weep and struggle like children pulled from sleep. Ropes bind them to benches. They cry out towards shore, begging to return. The Lotus Eaters do nothing. They simply watch. Calm, expressionless, as if they've seen this countless times, as if they know most mortals eventually choose forgetting. That unanswered mystery lingers. Who were these people truly? Mortals, priests, spirits, ancient storytellers never fully explain. And perhaps explanation would weaken the myth. Some mysteries work best unresolved. Back aboard ship, Odysseus gives immediate orders. Launch now. No delay. No one else ashore. Row? Hard. The oars strike water with urgency. The island slowly recedes. Only when distance grows does the spell weaken. The bound men begin to recover. Their eyes clear. Confusion returns. Then horror. They remember what they almost surrendered. They remember wanting to stay. That memory shames them. Night falls. Stars emerge one by one. Odysseus sits alone near the stern. The lesson settles heavily upon him. Not every enemy seeks to kill. Some seek to erase desire. Some seek to dissolve memory. And suddenly his longing for Ithaca feels more sacred than ever. Not weakness. Strength. The refusal to forget becomes holy. Above him the stars burn cold and clear. Below, black water stretches endlessly. He closes his eyes. For a brief moment the sweet scent of lotus returns, though the island is far behind. Then another scent replaces it. Goat. Milk. Cheese. Stone. He opens his eyes instantly. The dream has returned while awake. Ahead, barely visible under moonlight, a dark mass rises from the sea. An island. High cliffs. Black caves. And somewhere within that darkness, something waits. The single eye is getting closer. Morning reveals the island fully, and the first thing you notice is not danger but absence. No harbour walls, no piers, no fishing boats pulled onto shore, no smoke rising from clustered homes, no temple columns catching sunlight, no human order at all. The island rises from the sea in wild stone and steep green slopes, beautiful in a raw and unsettling way. Goats move along rocky ridges. Seabirds wheel over black cliffs. Sea caves open like wounds in the earth. The place feels ancient even by Greek standards, as if untouched by law city or civilization. Odysseus stands at the bow studying the coast in silence. The smell reaches them first once more, but this scent is different from the lotus groves. No sweetness now. Instead you smell damp stone wild grass, animal musk, and the faint, sharp scent of milk. His dream returns with frightening clarity. Goat, milk, cheese, stone, every detail is here, too exact to ignore. His crew feels it too, though, without understanding why. Unease spreads quietly. Men lower their voices. Even the usual complaints about rowing disappear. There is something about the island that resists ordinary speech. The Greeks had a powerful distinction between civilization and wilderness. Civilization meant walls, laws, rituals, agriculture, sacrifice, assemblies, hospitality, and respect for the gods. Wilderness meant uncertainty, disorder, the ungoverned. To the Greek imagination, monsters often lived where civilization ended. Not always because the land itself was evil, but because places beyond law allowed other forms of being to exist, and no beings embodied this more vividly than the Cyclopes. Ancient traditions vary on the Cyclopes. Some portray them as divine smiths who forged thunderbolts for Zeus. Others, including the tradition Odysseus will encounter, describe them as giant shepherds living apart from law and community. They have no assemblies, no councils, no ships, no cultivated justice. Each rules his own cave like a private kingdom. This detail matters deeply. The horror of the Cyclops is not only physical size, it is social isolation. He answers to no law outside himself. Odysseus orders the ships anchored near a smaller neighbouring islet rich with wild goats. The crew hunts and feasts, grateful for fresh meat after difficult days at sea. Fat crackles over fire. Smoke rises into clean morning air. For a little while the mood lightens, men laugh again, hunger eases, yet Odysseus cannot let the larger island go. Curiosity has awakened. That curiosity is one of his defining traits, perhaps even more dangerous than pride. He wants to know what lives there, what people dwell among those caves, whether gifts trade or knowledge might be found. This is where many interpretations of Odysseus diverge. Some scholars see him as brave and culturally curious. Others see reckless arrogance disguised as intelligence. Why enter unknown danger when supplies are already secured? Why risk men for curiosity? Ancient audiences likely understood both readings at once. Greatness often walks beside unnecessary risk. Before departing, some crew members urge caution. One says the goats are enough. Another says strange lands rarely reward unnecessary exploration. A third quietly reminds him of omens, the gull, the dreams, the eye. Odysseus listens, then chooses otherwise. This decision becomes one of the most important in the entire myth, not because the gods force it, because he chooses it. Fate in Greek myth rarely removes agency entirely. Destiny often works through character. Odysseus moves toward danger because he is Odysseus. He selects 12 companions and loads wine onto a smaller vessel. Not ordinary wine. Strong dark wine given earlier by Maron priest of Apollo after the raid at Ismarus. Rich, potent, nearly undiluted. The kind of wine requiring many parts water before drinking. This detail feels almost casual now, yet it will matter enormously later. Greek storytelling often plants objects before revealing their true importance. A wine jar today, salvation tomorrow. The landing on the Cyclops Island is eerie in its quiet. No defenders, no barking dogs, no human greeting. Just wind moving through grass and the distant bleating of sheep or goats somewhere higher among the rocks. Odysseus and his men climb inland. Their sandals scrape against stone. Salt dries on skin. Sunlight reflects off pale rock with painful brightness. Then they find it. The cave, large enough that no human builder could have shaped it for ordinary living. The entrance is vast, framed by dark volcanic stone. Outside are pens built from massive timber holding lambs and kids separated by age. Inside, shelves groan under wheels of cheese. Baskets overflow with curds. Pails brim with milk. Everything from his dream is here. The crew reacts immediately. Take the cheese, steal supplies, return to ship, leave now. It is sensible advice. Perhaps the last easy escape they will ever have. But Odysseus refuses. He wants to meet the owner. This choice reveals everything. He expects hospitality. He expects Xenia. He expects the sacred rules of host and guest to apply even here. That expectation is profoundly Greek. In his world, a stranger arriving at your home should be fed before questioned. Gift exchange creates relationship. Even enemies can become bound by sacred guest friendship. Odysseus assumes civilization's rules still hold. But what if they do not? That is the unanswered question sitting in the cave like a coiled serpent. The men grow anxious as afternoon stretches toward evening. Shadows lengthen. The cave cools. Damp stone releases earthy scent. Flies buzz near milk pails. The crew pleads again. Please, take what we can carry. Leave. Odysseus waits. This waiting is fascinating. It is not stupidity. It is conviction. He truly believes an encounter with the cave's owner can be navigated through intelligent speech and custom. That belief is about to shatter. Sunset bleeds red across the cave entrance. Then the ground trembles. At first lightly, then harder. Thud, 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 thud. Footsteps. Heavy beyond reason. The sheep outside begin bleating frantically. The men freeze. Silence crushes the cave. Then a shadow fills the entrance. Huge. Impossible. The owner has returned. He carries a bundle of wood so large it would burden several men. He hurls it down with explosive force. Branches crash across stone. Sparks leap from impact. The Greeks press themselves into shadow, breathing shallowly. Then he enters fully. The Cyclops. Polyphemus, massive beyond expectation. Shoulders broad as gatehouses. Limbs like carved pillars. Hair thick and wild, beard matted with milk and wind. His smell fills the cave animal musk, sweat, damp wool earth. But nothing arrests the eye more than his face. One enormous eye. Centered. Round. Wet. Reflecting firelight. Odysseus's blood turns cold. The dream. Every omen. Every warning. Here. Now. The Cyclops begins evening routine without noticing them at first. He pens the sheep, separates lambs, milks ewes with enormous hands, astonishingly gentle for such monstrous scale. Cheese is set aside, curds arranged. It is almost domestic. Almost. Then he rolls a stone across the entrance. The sound shakes the cave. The stone seals them in. Not even 20 men could move it. Escape vanishes. Only then does the Cyclops turn. His eye narrows. He sees them. At last he speaks. His voice is rough stone grinding against stone. Strangers. The single eye fixes on Odysseus. And then comes the question from the dream. Who are you? The question hangs in the cave like smoke. Who are you? In that single moment, everything Greek civilization taught about hospitality collides with something older, harsher, and utterly indifferent. Odysseus feels it immediately. This is not a king in a palace, not a shepherd living under sacred law, not a host who fears the judgment of Zeus, protector of guests. This is something outside the moral architecture of the Greek world. The fire crackles, sheep shift nervously, milk still drips into stone pails. The great eye remains fixed upon the men like a moon that has learned to hate. Odysseus steps forward despite the terror moving through his companions. His voice remains controlled, respectful, diplomatic. Even now he relies on speech first. That instinct reveals both wisdom and blindness. We are Achaeans, he says, naming the Greeks, driven by storms after Troy. We come as suppliants and guests. We ask hospitality and gifts fit for strangers as sacred custom demands. The words are carefully chosen. He invokes custom, sacred law, divine order. He appeals to shared religious structure. The Cyclops listens, then laughs. It is not loud laughter. That makes it worse. A low rumbling sound heavy with contempt. Cyclopes care nothing for Zeus. The words land like a blade. No Zeus. No sacred guest law. No shared moral world. The foundation beneath Odysseus's strategy collapses instantly. This moment matters profoundly in mythological meaning. Greek listeners would feel genuine horror here because civilization depends on mutual assumptions. Laws function because communities recognize them. Hospitality works because both guest and host believe in sacred obligation. But Polyphemus rejects the system itself. He fears no god above himself. He answers to appetite. Ancient audiences understood monsters not merely as ugly beings, but as embodiments of broken order. Polyphemus is monstrous because he represents radical lawlessness. His strength exists without accountability, and then horror becomes physical. Without warning, Polyphemus reaches down. 2 men, 1 hand. He lifts them as easily as a child lifting fruit. The Greeks scream. Odysseus moves for his sword, but too late. The Cyclops slams the men against stone. The sound is sickening. Bone, impact, silence. Blood spreads across rock. Then before the stunned survivors can fully understand what has happened, Polyphemus eats them. The cave becomes a nightmare of impossible contrast. Milk, cheese, firelight, domestic routine, cannibal violence. This contrast makes the scene unforgettable. The ordinary and monstrous exist side by side. Ancient storytellers understood that horror deepens when cruelty enters familiar spaces. The Cyclops eats calmly. Not rage, not frenzy, routine. As if consuming men differs little from consuming lamb. Odysseus grips his sword so hard his knuckles whiten. Murderous rage surges. Kill him now. Drive bronze into flesh. Take revenge. But reason cuts through fury. The stone. The entrance. If Polyphemus dies now, they remain trapped forever. This is the first great victory of Odysseus's mind over emotion inside the cave. He restrains immediate vengeance. That restraint saves lives. Yet the cost is unbearable. He must watch. Endure. Wait. Polyphemus finishes eating, drinks deeply of milk, then stretches out among sheep and falls asleep. His breathing becomes thunder. The Greeks huddle in darkness. Some shake. Some weep silently. One whispers that the gods have abandoned them. Another begs Odysseus for a plan. The king says nothing for a long time, because planning requires accepting reality. No easy escape exists. The entrance cannot be forced. Direct combat fails. Appeal fails. Prayer feels distant. Only intelligence remains. And this is where Odysseus becomes most himself. Not in battle. In impossible constraint. His mind begins moving. Observe. Inventory. Materials. Patterns. Weakness. He studies the cave by firelight. Wood piles. Cheese racks. Milk pails. Animal pens. Then he sees it. A massive olive wood stake. Fresh cut. Thick as a ship's mast. Polyphemus likely intended to shape it into a staff. Odysseus's gaze lingers. A thought forms. Terrible. Precise. Ancient Greeks held olive wood as sacred and symbolically rich. The olive tree connected to Athena, patron of wisdom, craft, and strategy. Whether intentional or poetic coincidence later, interpreters often noted the significance intelligence will weaponize sacred wood against brute force. Odysseus finally speaks. Quietly. We blind him. The men stare. Impossible. How? The stake is enormous. The Cyclops stronger than all of them combined. Odysseus explains. Cut. Sharpen. Harden in fire. Wait for opportunity. The plan feels insane. It is also brilliant. Before dawn, Polyphemus wakes. Morning routine resumes with horrifying normalcy. Milk the sheep. Sort the lambs. Eat 2 more Greeks. Open the cave. Drive flock outward. Seal cave again with stone. Leave survivors trapped. The day stretches endlessly. Fear grows heavier with time. Yet work begins. Odysseus and the remaining men trim the olive stake. They sharpen one end into brutal point. They harden it in fire, then hide it beneath dung to conceal preparation. This detail often surprises modern readers. Dung. Filth. Ancient survival cared little for elegance. A weapon hidden where a monster will not inspect. Effective. Night approaches again. The worst part of waiting is uncertainty. Will opportunity come? Will he notice? Will someone panic? Even Odysseus feels strain. He has solved many problems before, but never one like this. Some scholars argue the cave episode marks the purest expression of métis in all Greek literature. Raw force loses, conventional heroism fails, only adaptive intelligence survives. Sunset returns. Polyphemus re-enters. Stone seals the entrance. 2 more men die. The survivors nearly break. Then Odysseus acts. He approaches carrying wine. Dark. Powerful. Sacred wine from Meron. The jar saved through earlier chaos. Another callback of fate. An object preserved becomes salvation. Odysseus speaks with calculated humility. You ate our men, at least accept a gift. Polyphemus sniffs the wine. Drinks. His eye widens. He drinks again. And again. The potency hits fast. Undiluted Greek wine was devastating, especially to one unused to such strength. The Cyclops sways. Breathing thickens. His speech slurs. Then comes the moment that defines Odysseus forever. Polyphemus asks again, "What is your name?" Name matters deeply in Greek culture. A name carries identity, lineage, honour, legacy. To declare your name is to place yourself in the social world. Odysseus understands this, and lies. Nobody. In Greek autis. Nobody. No man. No one. The lie is elegant because it weaponizes language itself. Not sword. Not spear. Words. Polyphemus laughs drunkenly. Nobody. Then I shall eat nobody last. A terrible promise. Yet within it lies doom. The Cyclops collapses into sleep. Now, Odysseus gives the signal. The men move, hands shaking, heartbeats pounding. They lift the stake together. Heavy, hot, fire-hardened tip glowing. They position it above the sleeping giant. Odysseus counts silently. Then, drive. The stake plunges into the single eye. The scream that follows feels almost cosmic. Polyphemus erupts upward. The cave shakes. Men are thrown backward. The smell hits immediately. Burning flesh. Blood. Steam. The Greeks twist the stake deeper. Like craftsmen boring timber, ancient poets used exactly such imagery shipbuilders drilling wood. Horrifying inversion of civilization's tools. Polyphemus screams to the heavens. His voice rolls across cliffs and sea. He tears the stake free. Blood pours. Dark. Hot. Blinding. The eye is ruined. The prophecy is fulfilled. The single eye has opened. Now it is destroyed. And yet one question remains unresolved. Have they escaped, or only enraged something far worse? Because outside, across the dark island, other Cyclope is awaking. They hear the screams. They approach the cave, and they call out. What happened? Polyphemus howls in agony. Nobody's killing me. Silence. Then confusion. Anger. Dismissal. If nobody harms you, then your suffering comes from the gods. The other Cyclopes leave. Odysseus' lie works perfectly. A triumph of genius. But not freedom. Not yet. The stone still seals the cave. Morning still must come. And Odysseus, breathing hard in darkness, begins to feel something dangerous rising inside him. Relief. Pride. The intoxicating certainty that once again his cleverness has conquered impossible odds. That feeling will soon cost him everything. Night inside the cave stretches endlessly. The scream of Polyphemus still seems to vibrate through the stone long after his voice fades into ragged groans. Blood and tears pour from the ruined eye, darkening the earth beneath him. The smell of burned flesh lingers heavily in the air, mixing with smoke, sheep wool, milk and fear. You can almost feel the heat still radiating from the olive stake lying discarded near the fire. Around Odysseus, his surviving companions breathe in short, shallow bursts. They have succeeded in blinding the monster. They have survived the impossible, and yet they remain trapped. That is the cruel brilliance of the cave. Victory has come, but freedom has not. Odysseus forces himself to stay calm. This is the most dangerous moment, not battle after battle. Ancient Greek storytellers understood this deeply. Men often died not during conflict, but in the emotional collapse that followed it. Relief invites mistakes. Pride invites loosened discipline. Fear invites panic. Odysseus knows they must think clearly now or die at dawn. The Cyclops staggers through the cave, roaring, smashing blindly at walls, kicking over milk pails, crushing baskets beneath enormous feet. Every movement threatens death. One careless step could pulp a man into stone. The Greeks flatten themselves into shadows silent as buried bones. Polyphemus reaches toward the darkness again and again, fingers sweeping through empty air, searching for flesh. He cannot see, but his hearing remains sharp. One misplaced breath could betray them. Hours pass. At last the giant collapses near the entrance stone, groaning. And then Odysseus sees the pattern. The sheep. That is the key. Morning comes slowly. Grey light leaks around the stone entrance. Polyphemus, half mad with pain, drags himself upright. Even blinded, routine remains. This detail feels strangely tragic. He still performs the habits of shepherd life. He still calls to his animals. he still touches lambs gently with blood-covered hands. Myth often becomes more haunting when monsters retain traces of ordinary life. Then he rolls the great stone aside. Cold morning air floods the cave. Escape stands near, yet not simple. Polyphemus kneels at the opening and stretches both arms across the exit, enormous hands ready to feel each sheep as it passes. He cannot see, so he will inspect by touch. Any man trying to run upright will be caught instantly. The Greeks feel hope vanish. Then Odysseus's mind moves again. He binds the rams together in groups of 3 using woven cords from the pens. Strong ram in centre, 1 on each side. Beneath the belly of each middle ram a man clings tightly hidden from the Cyclops' hands. It is brilliant. Not glamorous. Not heroic in the traditional sense. No sword raised. No duel. Only survival through patience and design. Odysseus saves himself for last choosing the largest ram in the flock. He wraps both arms beneath its thick wool and presses himself into warm animal musk and coarse fleece. The ram's heartbeat thumps steadily above him. Wool scratches his skin. His muscles tremble from strain. One by one the sheep move toward the entrance. Polyphemus touches each animal's back. Wool, horn, hide. Pass. Another. Pass. Another. Pass. Every second feels suspended between life and death. Ancient audiences loved this tension because it inverted heroic expectation. The great king of Ithaca escapes not like a conquering warrior but like a hidden parasite clinging beneath livestock. Humility forced or chosen becomes survival. At last Odysseus reaches the entrance. The ram slows. Polyphemus's massive hand rests on its back. He speaks to the animal. His voice has changed. Still rough but wounded now, almost sorrowful. Old friend, why last today? The ram shifts under Odysseus. Polyphemus strokes its wool. What follows is one of the most haunting speeches in the Odyssey. The Cyclops speaks to the ram as if to a companion. He imagines the animal grieving with him. He wonders whether it understands his suffering. He curses the stranger called Nobody, and in that moment something unexpected happens. The monster becomes strangely human, not civilized, not good, but suffering. Some modern scholars point to this scene as psychologically remarkable. Homer allows even the monster a moment of pathos. Pain humanizes without absolving. Polyphemus remains monstrous, yet you glimpse loneliness beneath brutality. His hand lifts. The ram passes. Odysseus is free. One by one the survivors escape the cave and run toward the shore. Legs weak, lungs burning, hearts pounding. They untie themselves from the sheep and sprint over stone and grass toward the waiting boat. Behind them the Cyclops still calls helplessly from the cave. They reach the vessel. Push. Launch. Row. Hard. Oars/water. The shoreline begins to recede. Distance grows. Safety approaches. And here at the edge of survival comes the most important turning point in the entire story. Odysseus should leave. Silently. He should vanish. He should accept survival as victory. But something inside him refuses. Pride awakens. Not loud at first. Subtle. Hot. Insistent. He looks back at the island. At the blinded giant. At the cave shrinking into distance. He remembers fear. Humiliation. Dead companions. He remembers how his intelligence saved everyone. And suddenly survival feels incomplete without recognition. This is hubris returning. The same flaw foreshadowed from the beginning. He needs the monster to know. He needs witness. He needs credit. Ancient Greek audiences would feel dread here instantly, because the warning signs are obvious. Victory plus wounded pride equals danger. Odysseus stands in the ship and shouts toward shore. Cyclops. His men freeze. No, don't. But he continues. If anyone asks who blinded you, even now he could stop. He doesn't. Tell them it was Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca. The words explode across the sea. Name, lineage, glory, identity. Everything he wisely concealed, now revealed. Why? That question has fascinated readers for millennia. Why would the cleverest man in Greece commit such a catastrophic error? Some scholars argue trauma explains it. After prolonged terror, the human mind craves restored dignity. Others suggest heroic culture itself demanded reputation. Glory mattered almost as much as survival. Another interpretation feels deepest. Odysseus cannot bear anonymity. He can become nobody to survive, but he cannot remain nobody. That strikes at the core of identity. He must reclaim his name, even at terrible cost. On shore, Polyphemus stiffens. The name lands. Odysseus, not nobody. A real man. A lineage. A target. Rage transforms his grief. With terrifying strength, the Cyclops tears loose a massive boulder and hurls it toward the sound. The rock crashes into the sea just ahead of the ship. The impact erupts into towering spray. The wave lifts the vessel violently and drives it backward towards shore. Men scream. Rowers fight current. They barely recover. The crew begs Odysseus to stop. Enough! Please, leave. But wounded pride rarely yields immediately. Odysseus shouts again, taunting, mocking. The fatal mistake is complete. Then Polyphemus raises both arms toward the sky, and the atmosphere changes. This is no longer monster against man. This becomes son calling father. Blood runs down his ruined face. His blind eye faces heaven. His voice rises across sea and stone. Father. The word alone chills the air. Odysseus goes still. Too late understanding begins. Polyphemus continues. Hear me, Poseidon, Earthshaker. Silence falls over sea. Even wind seems to pause. The prayer becomes curse. If truly I am your son, Odysseus feels cold enter his bones. If fate allows Odysseus to reach home, the curse sharpens. Let him return late. A wave strikes the hull. Let him return broken. Wind rises. Let him return alone. Clouds gather unnaturally. Let him find sorrow in his house. Thunder murmurs beyond the horizon. The sea listens. And somewhere deep below all mortal waters, something awakens. The prayer ends, but its power has only begun. Odysseus stands frozen. For the first time, the full truth becomes clear. He did not merely wound a monster. He wounded the son of a god. Not just any god. The god of the sea. The realm he must cross to reach home. The realm with no escape. The realm surrounding every path forward. The realm of Poseidon. The ship rows desperately into widening distance. But distance no longer matters, because hatred has found a name, and Poseidon now knows his. The sea changes before anyone speaks. It happens so subtly that at first only Odysseus notices. The surface of the water loses its natural rhythm. The waves still move, yet something inside their motion feels wrong, as though an intelligence now travels beneath them. The familiar rise and fall of open sea becomes deliberate, watchful, almost sentient. Odysseus stands motionless at the stern, eyes fixed on the darkening horizon. Behind them, the island of the Cyclops grows smaller, but the curse does not shrink with distance. It expands. It settles into the air like cold mist. Around him, the crew rows in silence, their earlier relief completely gone. No one needs to say what they're thinking. They all heard the prayer. They all heard the name. Poseidon. For the ancient Greeks, lineage mattered among gods no less than among mortals. To injure a stranger was one thing. To injure the child of a god was another entirely. Divine families carried power through blood loyalty, vengeance, pride, and obligation. Gods did not always love their children equally. But insult to divine lineage carried consequences. Polyphemus had not cried to a distant abstract deity. He had called to his father, and fathers, whether mortal or divine, remember wounds inflicted upon their children. The crew begins whispering. One sailor curses Odysseus under his breath. Another says what several fear to say aloud. You should not have shouted. The accusation hangs in the salt air. Odysseus hears it. He does not answer immediately. Because the accusation is true. That truth is difficult for him. Not because he cannot recognize mistakes. He can. His intelligence demands realism. What makes this wound painful is that the mistake was unnecessary. No storm forced it. No god compelled it. No monster tricked him. He chose. This distinction matters enormously in Greek tragedy. Fate may shape conditions, but character often determines the fatal act. The Greeks understood disaster not merely as bad luck, but as the collision between circumstance and flaw. In Odysseus, that flaw is now fully visible. Pride after triumph, the need to be known, the refusal to remain nobody. He finally speaks. Yes, just one word. Quiet. Heavy. The admission unsettles the crew more than denial would have, because kings rarely confess faults so plainly, but confession does not reverse consequence. Wind begins rising. No thunder yet. No rain. Only pressure. The sea darkens from blue to iron grey. Clouds gather in distant layers, moving faster than natural weather should allow. Even the light changes. Sun remains above, but its warmth feels withdrawn. Ancient sailors often described the approach of truly dangerous storms as spiritual before meteorological. Animals changed first. Air changed first. Silence changed first. Now all three converge. No birds. No dolphins. No gulls. Nothing living moves across the surface. Only water. Only waiting. Far below the ship, beyond visible depth, the Greeks imagined another world entirely. Not empty ocean, but kingdom. Coral halls, bronze gates, pillars of polished shell and gold, chariots drawn by creatures born of sea foam, horses with manes like white surf, sea nymphs drifting through blue light. In those deep halls sat Poseidon, not sleeping, not passive, listening. Ancient literature often leaves the exact moment of divine attention mysterious. Did Poseidon hear instantly? Did prayer travel through sacred lore? Did the emotional force of a wounded son reach him like vibration through water? Historians continue to debate how Greek worshippers imagined divine awareness. Some believed gods were omnipresent within their domains. Others imagined attention as selective, focused by sacrifice, prayer, or insult. Whatever the mechanism, myth makes one thing clear. Poseidon hears. You descend in imagination now beneath the waves deeper and deeper, where sunlight thins into green shadow and then disappears entirely. The pressure grows immense. Silence becomes almost sacred. And there, seated upon a throne carved from living stone and sea-polished crystal, is the Earthshaker. Poseidon is not merely powerful, he feels ancient, older in temperament than many Olympians, less civilized than Athena, less judicial than Zeus, more elemental. He is force-shaped into personality. Storm-given memory. The Greeks feared him, because sea violence feels personal. Storm does not negotiate. A wave does not reason. Water crushes without hatred, yet Poseidon adds something worse. Emotion. Now that emotion begins to stir. A son's agony reaches him. A blinded eye. Blood. Humiliation. Prayer. Then a name. Odysseus. King of Ithaca. The god rises. Not with dramatic rage. That would be simpler. No. His anger begins cold. Measured. This makes it more terrifying. Some later traditions imagine Poseidon's first response not as explosive fury, but offended stillness. The kind of silence preceding earthquakes. Because insult to power often wounds pride before provoking violence. A mortal blinded his son, then boasted, then named himself. This last detail matters deeply. Odysseus did what prayers require. He made himself known. Poseidon now possesses target lineage and destination. Ithaca. The god knows where the man longs to go, and longing offers the perfect weapon. Kill him quickly! Too merciful. Drown him immediately. Too simple. Polyphemus asked for something richer. Delay. Loss. Loneliness. Sorrow. The cruelty of the curse lies in design. Poseidon does not merely seek death. He seeks erosion. To grind a man down through years. To turn homecoming into suffering. Above the crew feels none of these divine deliberations directly. What they feel is dread. Odysseus orders course correction, hoping to gain distance before weather worsens. Men obey, though trust has shifted. Something subtle fractures here. They still follow him. They still need him. But confidence now includes resentment. Leadership after failure changes tone. Every future decision becomes harder. Night approaches unnaturally fast. Cloud banks swallow the western sky. Light narrows to cold silver bands over water. The wind now whistles through rigging with rising force. Rope strains, sailcloth snaps like whips. Then comes the first divine sign. The sea rises in a single long swell. Too smooth, too large. No ordinary wind explains it. The ship lifts. Higher, higher. Every man grips wood. Then drops. The impact shakes the hull. A second swell follows. Then a third. Rhythmic. Intentional. Like footsteps. Odysseus feels his stomach turn. Not from motion. Recognition. Something is here. Not visible. Present. The callback to his earliest dream returns with terrible clarity. Black shore. Massive shape beneath water. Voice through bone. You will be broken before you bend. He understands now. The breaking has begun. One sailor screams and points overboard. A shape moves beneath the surface. Enormous. Impossible to fully see. Just a darker darkness beneath dark water. Then gone. Panic ripples through the crew. Did you see? What was that? Gods preserve us. Odysseus shouts for discipline. His voice still commands attention. Barely. But fear has changed category. Men can fight enemies. How do you fight a sea that watches? Rain begins. Cold. Sharp. Relentless. Not gentle rainfall. Hard slanting sheets driven sideways by violent gusts. Visibility collapses. The world shrinks to ship water and storm. Lightning flashes. In that white instant, every face appears skeletal. Then darkness again. Thunder follows almost instantly. Too close. The storm erupts. Ancient audiences would recognize this as epiphany through weather the god revealing presence through domain. Poseidon need not appear in human shape. The storm is appearance enough. Waves slam the hull. Water floods deck. Enbail frantically. Oars become useless. Sail must be cut. Odysseus moves with brutal efficiency, commanding tying, securing, shouting through chaos. This is another paradox of his character. His flaw caused disaster. His brilliance keeps them alive within it. Both truths coexist. Hours vanish. Perhaps an entire night. Time dissolves inside survival. At some point amid thunder and collapsing spray, Odysseus hears something impossible. Laughter. Not human. Deep. Rolling. Inside the storm. No one else reacts. Was it real? Hallucination. Divine mockery? Another mystery survives. Some traditions suggest gods rarely speak plainly during punishment. They let nature carry emotion. Still the sensation remains. Poseidon is no longer abstract. He feels personal, intentional, aware. Near dawn, exhausted beyond speech, Odysseus collapses briefly against the mast. Salt burns his eyes. Blood runs from split knuckles. Every muscle aches. And for the first time since leaving Troy, a thought enters him without defense. What if I never reach home? The question terrifies him, not because it is dramatic, because it is sincere. Before now, survival always felt probable. His mind could solve things. Plans existed. Options existed. Now a god stands between him and Ithaca. Intelligence cannot negotiate with resentment divine. Rain lashes harder. The ship groans like a living creature. And somewhere deep below, Poseidon's anger settles into something far more dangerous than rage. Patience. Because gods do not tire. Gods can wait years, and Poseidon has decided something final. Odysseus will not be granted an easy homecoming. He will be tested until pride breaks, or until nothing remains to break. The storm does not last forever, though in memory it feels endless. By the time dawn finally breaks, the sea looks less like a battlefield and more like the aftermath of one. The rain has softened to mist. Waves still roll heavily beneath the ship, but their violence has eased. Broken rope trails across the deck. One oar is gone. 2 water jars lie shattered. Men sit slumped where exhaustion defeated fear. Salt dries white on skin and wool. The smell of wet wood, sweat and seawater hangs thick in the cold morning air. Odysseus remains standing, though barely. His hands are raw, his shoulders burn. Yet the greater wound lies somewhere unseen. He now understands a truth he had resisted. This journey is no longer a difficult voyage home. It has become personal. The sea itself has taken offence. The domain between him and Ithaca now belongs to an enemy who knows his name. Days pass before the crew fully recovers. They row under cautious skies, sleeping in shifts, speaking little. Even the most talkative sailors have grown quiet. Fear matures into vigilance. Every gust of wind is studied. Every cloud becomes suspicious. Odysseus notices the change. The men still obey him, but something has hardened behind their eyes. Trust once flowed naturally from admiration. Now it shares space with doubt. A leader may survive mistakes, but authority always changes after catastrophe. Then when provisions run low and fatigue deepens, land appears once more. At first it seems unreal. An island rising from blue water ringed by smooth cliffs and green slopes brushed by soft wind. No violent surf crashes against it. No dark caves threaten from the shoreline. Instead, the air itself feels strangely ordered. The wind behaves differently here. It does not gust wildly. It circles with eerie precision, almost as if guided by invisible hands. Odysseus narrows his eyes. Something sacred lies ahead. The island belongs to Aeolus, keeper of the winds, beloved by the gods, and entrusted with strange authority over air itself. Ancient Greeks imagined winds not as simple weather patterns, but as living forces with names, directions, and personalities. The north wind bit with winter cruelty. The west wind brought gentleness and spring. Storm winds howled like beasts. To master wind was to govern motion, navigation, fate. Few gifts could matter more to sailors. As the ships approach, the island reveals impossible architecture. A bronze wall circles the settlement, gleaming under sunlight. Within rise polished halls where smoke curls from orderly hearths. No sign of poverty, no sign of chaos. Everything feels contained, balanced. Civilization returns, and with it hope. The reception surprises them. Aeolus welcomes Odysseus not as beggar but as honoured guest. This matters. After the lawless horror of Polyphemus, the return of sacred hospitality feels almost healing. Food is offered. Meat roasts over fire. Wine is poured into clean cups. Lamps glow warmly in carved halls. The smell of olive oil, bread herbs, and cedar smoke fills the air. Soft blankets replace damp cloaks. For the first time in many days, the crew sleeps without immediate fear of drowning. Odysseus stays longer. One day becomes several. Several become nearly a month. Ancient storytellers often emphasize this strange pause. Why does Aeolus offer such generosity? Some researchers suggest Odysseus's reputation as the hero of Troy preceded him. Others interpret Aeolus as a divine test disguised as mercy, because gifts from gods or godlike figures rarely arrive without deeper meaning. During long evenings in torchlit halls, Odysseus recounts his journey. Troy, the Cicons, the Lotus Eaters, Polyphemus, the curse of Poseidon. Aeolus listens carefully. Unlike ordinary hosts, he seems deeply interested in the sea god's anger. That detail lingers. He understands wind. He understands weather. Perhaps he understands divine conflict too. At last, when Odysseus prepares to depart, Aeolus gives a gift unlike any mortal treasure. Not gold, not bronze, not livestock. A bag, made from ox hide, heavy, sealed with shining silver cord. Aeolus places it in Odysseus's hands. His voice turns grave. Inside this bag, he explains, are all the wild winds, all except the gentle west wind that will carry Odysseus home. The dangerous winds are bound. Contained, restrained, the symbolism is beautiful and unsettling. Greek myth often personified forces humans cannot control. Here chaos itself becomes portable, storms reduced to an object small enough to carry, but only under trust. Aeolus offers a warning. Guard it. Do not open it. Let no one tamper with the seal. The west wind alone will guide you home. The warning lands heavily. Odysseus nods. Another warning. Another test. The pattern continues. Gift. Instruction. Temptation. Consequences. Odysseus secures the bag himself and tells no one its true contents. This decision feels practical. it is also dangerous. Secrecy and leadership rarely mix cleanly. He fears curiosity, he fears sabotage, but secrecy breeds suspicion. That seed now quietly takes root. The fleet departs, and something extraordinary happens. The voyage becomes easy, almost impossibly easy. The west wind fills the sails with steady, perfect force. No storms, no violent currents, no monstrous omens. The sea smooths into glittering blue lanes. Days pass peacefully. Even the crew begin smiling again. Hope returns. Perhaps Poseidon's anger has weakened. Perhaps Aeolus's power shields them. Perhaps Ithaca truly lies ahead. Odysseus never releases the bag. He sleeps beside it, guards it, holds it close. His men notice. At first, curiosity feels harmless. Then curiosity becomes speculation. What did Aeolus give him? Why hide it? Why guard it constantly? Gold, silver, jewels, treasure from a divine king. Whispers begin. Ancient epics understand something timeless about groups under stress. Shared suffering can unify, but prolonged deprivation magnifies envy. Men who row, bleed and starve together may still resent unequal reward. One sailor speaks quietly at night. Why should the king alone possess the gift? Another answers. He always keeps the best for himself. Not all believe this, but suspicion does not need majority, only repetition. Odysseus remains unaware of how far resentment grows, or perhaps he notices and underestimates it. That possibility feels painfully human. At last, after 9 days of perfect sailing, land appears. Ithaca. Home. Real. Visible. The outline of familiar hills rises on the horizon beneath morning light. Smoke from distant hearths climbs into the sky. Shoreline, harbour, olive-covered slopes. Odysseus sees it. His heart nearly breaks. Home. After Troy. After storms. After monsters. After death. Home. He can already imagine Penelope. Telemachus. Stone floors. Olive-wood bed. Warm lamplight. The sacred ache of longing becomes overwhelming. For 9 days he has not slept properly guarding the bag. Exhaustion finally claims him. Just for a moment, he lies near the stern, still clutching the bag, and falls asleep. That sleep becomes one of the most tragic sleeps in myth, because the crew sees opportunity. They gather quietly, eyes fixed on the sealed oxhide bag. Whispers sharpen. Gold, silver, treasure hidden from them. Why else protect it so fiercely? No one knows truth. No one asks. Suspicion has already become belief. This is crucial. Many disasters in myth emerge not from evil, but from ignorance mixed with insecurity. One sailor reaches first. Another helps. Silver cord. Tight. Sealed. Forbidden. And then they open it. For one heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the world explodes. Wind erupts from the bag with catastrophic force. All imprisoned storms burst free at once. North wind, south wind, east wind, tempest. Howl! Scream! The ship convulses. Odysseus wakes instantly. Too late. Sails snap. Mass groan. Men scream in terror. The sky darkens as if night has returned in seconds. The released winds roar with divine violence, twisting sea into chaos. Ithaca disappears behind walls of spray. The fleet is seized, dragged backward, pulled away from home with savage force. Odysseus crawls toward the open bag. Empty. The silver cord whips violently. Understanding hits him with devastating clarity. Home was there, visible, reachable, lost. Not by gods, not by monsters, by mistrust, by secrecy, by human weakness. Again, the callback to earlier warnings becomes unbearable. Siconus, ignored warning. Lotus, temptation. Cyclops, pride. Now this, distrust. The winds hurl the fleet backward across the sea farther and farther from Ithaca. Odysseus screams into the storm. Not commands, not strategy, raw anguish. Because this loss feels uniquely cruel. To almost arrive and be torn away. That is the true genius of Polyphemus's curse. Not simple suffering, delayed hope. Poseidon's vengeance is becoming clear. He does not merely block homecoming. He lets Odysseus taste it. See it, feel it, then removes it. The storm carries them relentlessly, and when at last it ends, the island before them is horribly familiar. Aeolus. They have returned, but nothing about this return feels hopeful, because now Odysseus must face a painful question. Will divine mercy be offered twice, or has fate already closed that door? When the storm finally loosens its grip, the ships drift like wounded animals across grey water. No one speaks. The silence is heavier than thunder. Days earlier, laughter had returned. Ithaca had stood visible on the horizon, close enough that Odysseus could almost smell olive wood smoke rising from his own hearth. Now that vision feels cruel, almost unreal, like a dream granted only to deepen pain. You stand beside him as he stares at the ruined bag in his hands. The ox hide lies limp, now empty, innocent in appearance, yet carrying the weight of catastrophe. He does not shout at his men. That may be the most devastating detail of all. Rage would release pressure. Silence traps it. His jaw tightens, but no accusation comes. Perhaps because he understands something bitter. Their mistrust did not appear from nowhere. It grew in the shadows of his own secrecy. Leadership had failed twice, first through pride, now through concealment. The island of Aeolus rises again through mist, its bronze walls glinting under pale sun exactly as before. But returning to mercy after wasting it feels different from receiving it the first time. Ancient listeners would understand the shame immediately. Greek culture placed enormous value on honour in gift exchange. To misuse sacred hospitality risked more than embarrassment. It signalled unworthiness. Odysseus knows this as he climbs once more toward Aeolus's hall. His steps feel heavier. His crew remains behind, exhausted and hollow-eyed. Some cannot meet his gaze. Others stare at the ground, consumed by guilt. A few still quietly resent him. Suffering rarely creates pure repentance. Human emotions remain tangled. Aeolus receives Odysseus, but the warmth of the first welcome is gone. No festive table, no leisurely wine, no smiling household. The hall feels colder though the fires still burn. Wind chimes hanging near bronze pillars whisper softly in invisible currents, and somehow even that sound feels judgmental. Odysseus tells the truth. The bag was opened, the winds escaped, Ithaca was lost. He asks for mercy once more. For a moment Aeolus says nothing. His expression hardens into something difficult to read, pity perhaps, but also recognition. Then he speaks words that wound deeper than insult. Leave this island. His voice remains calm, almost sorrowful. The gods clearly hate you. I cannot aid one whom the immortals have marked for ruin. The sentence lands with terrible finality. The Greeks feared many things, but few are more chilling than visible divine abandonment. If even a powerful keeper of winds refuses further help, because he sees divine hostility, what hope remains? Historians sometimes note that this episode marks a psychological turning point in the Odyssey. Before now, setbacks still felt solvable, hard, painful, but solvable. After Aeolus rejects him, Odysseus begins to understand that his suffering has entered another category. This is no longer misfortune alone. This is persecution woven into destiny. Odysseus returns to the ships carrying nothing. No wind, no blessing, no second chance. The crew reads the answer instantly from his face. One sailor mutters a prayer, another begins quietly weeping. Not dramatic sobbing, just silent tears from a man whose hope has been stretched too far. Odysseus gives the order to depart. No speech, no comfort, only movement. Sometimes survival demands motion even when meaning feels absent. They row for 6 long days, 6 days across open sea under indifferent skies. No favourable wind carries them now. Progress comes through muscle alone. Oars dip, pull, hands blister, shoulders burn, salt cracks lips, food runs low, water tastes stale in clay jars. Sleep comes in fragments, conversation nearly vanishes. The rhythmic splash of oars becomes the dominant sound of existence. In such monotony, the mind changes. Some men retreat into memory, wives, children, vineyards, dogs waiting by familiar doors. Others retreat into superstition. They count omens, track cloud shapes, whisper about curses. Some begin watching Odysseus differently, not merely as captain, but as the axis around which disaster turns. That suspicion matters. Poseidon's curse is not only external, it corrodes relationships. Isolation begins long before physical solitude. On the seventh day, land appears again. Relief should come. Instead, unease rises. The coastline ahead is strange high cliffs forming a narrow entrance into what appears to be a perfect harbour. Still water inside. Calm, sheltered, safe. Too safe. Odysseus studies it with narrowed eyes. The harbour is nearly enclosed by towering rock walls, as if carved into the earth by a giant hand. Only a narrow passage connects inner waters to the sea. Most exhausted sailors see blessing. Odysseus sees a trap. Ancient myth often uses geography symbolically. Open harbours suggest freedom. Narrow enclosed spaces suggest confinement, hidden danger, entrapment. Greek audiences listening by firelight would already feel dread building. Beautiful stillness in myth rarely remains innocent for long. The fleet approaches. The cliffs rise higher, casting long shadows across the water. Echoes behave strangely here. Oars striking water return amplified. Voices bounce from stone, even gull cries sound distorted. The air smells of wet rock moss and something faintly metallic. No visible settlements line the harbour, yet smoke rises farther inland. Civilization exists, but hidden. All ships except Odysseus's enter the harbour. Here his caution returns. Perhaps the pain of recent failures has sharpened instinct. He keeps his own ship outside the narrow entrance, mooring it to a rocky outcrop. His men question the choice, but he does not explain fully. He simply watches. This decision will save him. A scouting party goes inland. They follow a path through steep terrain until they encounter something unexpected. A young woman drawing water from a spring. She appears ordinary enough, tall, strong, calm. She gives directions to a nearby house, describing it as the dwelling of her father. Hospitality seems possible again. Yet myth loves false normalcy. The spring glitters under sunlight. Water flows clear and cold. Nothing outward signals horror. The scouts continue. The house they find is enormous. Too large. Doors too tall. Furniture outsized. And then she appears. Not the girl. Her mother. A giantess. Ancient tradition names this people the Laestrygonians, man-eating giants less solitary than Cyclopes, and perhaps even more terrifying because they live as a society. A civilization of predators. The symbolism is chilling. Not one monster outside law, but an entire culture where devouring humans is normalized. The queen seizes one scout instantly. Eats him. The others flee in terror. Their screams reach the harbour just as shadows move along the cliffs above. Too late. The Laestrygonians descend. Hundreds. Massive figures hurling boulders the size of houses. The calm harbour becomes a killing bowl. Ships trapped inside cannot manoeuvre. Stone crashes into hulls. Wood explodes. Masts snap. Men are crushed or hurled into water. Spears rain down. Giant hooks drag sailors upward like fish. The harbour erupts into slaughter. Odysseus sees everything from outside and understands instantly. Trap. The enclosed harbour that seemed safe has become a death pit. His voice cuts through the chaos with a desperate force. Cut the ropes. His crew hacks the mooring line. Oars strike furiously. The ship surges backward into open sea while destruction roars behind them. Every other ship is lost. Every ship. The sound of men dying echoes off stone walls. Broken timbers float amid blood and foam. The fleet that left Troy in proud numbers is reduced in minutes to one surviving vessel. This is the true beginning of isolation. No more allied captains. No more companionships visible at dawn. No more shared fleet. Only Odysseus. One ship. One shrinking community. Poseidon's curse advances exactly as promised. Return late, return broken, return alone. The words spoken by blinded Polyphemus now feel less like prayer and more like architecture. Each catastrophe builds the curse stone by stone. As evening falls, the lone surviving ship drifts into open water. The men aboard sit in stunned silence. No one counts the dead aloud. The number is too immense. Odysseus stands at the stern again, staring into gathering darkness. Salt wind moves through his hair. Somewhere behind them, the harbour disappears into night, taking most of his fleet with it. And as stars slowly emerge overhead, one thought settles into his mind with terrible clarity. Poseidon is not rushing. That is what makes the hatred so frightening. The god is patient. He is stripping Odysseus piece by piece, not killing, reducing, until only the man himself remains. And perhaps that is the punishment. To discover who Odysseus truly is when everything else has been taken away. Night after the slaughter feels unnaturally still. That is what haunts the survivors most. Not the screams, not the splintering wood, not even the sight of ships crushed like toys beneath falling stone. It is the silence afterward. One ship now crosses the Black Sea where once a fleet had stretched across the horizon. One ship. One narrow strip of timber between life and the abyss. You sit with Odysseus beneath a sky crowded with stars, and for the first time since Troy, the scale of his loss becomes impossible to ignore. When he left the ruined city, he commanded many ships and hundreds of men. He was a king among captains, a strategist surrounded by force. Now, almost everything has been stripped away. Poseidon's curse is no longer abstract. It has shape. It has rhythm. It is dismantling him. The surviving crew barely speaks. Some stare blankly into darkness. Others grip oars long after rowing stops, as if releasing them would mean surrendering to grief. One young sailor quietly repeats the names of lost brothers, over and over, as if repetition alone can prevent forgetting. Ancient Greeks feared oblivion almost as much as death. To die was tragic. To be forgotten was worse. Names preserved memory, memory preserved meaning. Odysseus hears the whispered names. He says nothing, but something inside him shifts. Until now, every disaster still contained urgency, strategy, movement. Solve, adapt, survive. But grief behaves differently. It slows thought. It sinks into the body. It turns silence into burden. Even Odysseus cannot outthink mourning. This matters because mythology often focuses on action, but Homeric storytelling understands emotional exhaustion. Heroes do not merely bleed from wounds, they erode from cumulative loss. The sea around them glows faintly under moonlight. Phosphorescence trails behind the ship like cold fire, each disturbance in the water leaving ghostly light. Ancient sailors often interpreted such glowing water as supernatural presence. Some saw blessings, others saw spirits. Scholars continue to debate how these natural phenomena shaped myth, but for exhausted men drifting under divine curse, such light feels ominous. One sailor suddenly asked the question no one wanted spoken aloud. Why us? Not why storms happen. Not why monsters exist. Why Poseidon chose them. Why one act inside one cave has unleashed such relentless punishment? Odysseus finally answers. Because I gave him my name. The simplicity of the answer hurts. No excuses, no self-defense, only truth. The confession deepens the silence. For a brief moment, resentment and pity coexist in the crew. Their captain caused this. Their captain also remains the only reason they are alive. This paradox defines Odysseus more with each passing section. His flaw creates catastrophe. His brilliance prevents annihilation. Both truths tighten around him like opposing ropes. By dawn, fatigue becomes nearly physical weight, pressing on every body aboard. Eyes burn, hands tremble. Water supplies are low. Food is rationed harshly. Salt sores crack along fingers and lips. Every movement feels slower. Even the ship seems tired, its timbers groaning softly with each swell. Land appears near midday. This time no one cheers. Hope itself has become dangerous. The coastline rises green and forested, softer than the brutal cliffs of the Laestrygonian harbour. Birds circle overhead. Freshwater streams glimmer through trees. The island looks almost welcoming. That makes everyone suspicious. Ancient myth teaches a cruel lesson. Repeatedly appearance offers no guarantees. Odysseus studies the shore. Dense woodland. High hills. Mist hanging among trees. No obvious threat. No obvious safety. Only uncertainty. Uncertainty has become the natural climate of his life. The crew begs for rest. They need fresh water food, sleep and distance from open sea. Even Odysseus cannot deny necessity. They beach the ship on a quiet shore where grass bends gently under warm wind. The smell here feels different from recent horrors. Pine resin, earth-wet leaves, herbs crushed beneath sandals. After weeks of salt and death, the scent of soil feels almost sacred. Several men kneel to drink from a nearby spring. Cold water runs over cracked hands. Some begin crying without warning. Exhaustion lowers emotional defences. Odysseus allows them rest, but remains alert. He climbs a ridge overlooking the island. From there he sees something unexpected. Smoke. Thin grey columns rising from deep inland forest. Civilization. Or something like it. Not natural fire. Not lightning. Deliberate flame. His mind immediately returns to pattern. Where there is smoke, there are dwellings. Where there are dwellings, there may be danger. Or hospitality. Both possibilities remain open. Greek heroes constantly navigated this uncertainty. A stranger's hearth could mean feast or death. Hospitality was sacred, but only among those who honoured it. Odysseus descends and divides responsibilities carefully. Some men guard the ship, others prepare food. A small scouting party will go inland. But this time something subtle changes. He hesitates before choosing. That hesitation matters. Loss has altered him. Earlier, Odysseus moved toward mystery with curiosity and confidence. Now caution dominates. He has learned, though not yet fully enough. Some researchers argue this is the beginning of Odysseus' transformation from confident strategist into burdened survivor. The difference is small but important. Strategy seeks advantage. Survival seeks continuation. He chooses trusted companions and heads inland. The forest deepens quickly. Sunlight breaks through branches in fractured gold patterns. Insects hum. Leaves whisper overhead. Every sound feels magnified. Twigs crack beneath sandals. Somewhere distant birds suddenly stop singing. Silence again. Silence has become a recurring omen. The path opens into a clearing. There, rising among trees, stands a structure both beautiful and unsettling. A hall. Stone foundation. Polished wooden beams. Bronze glinting near the entrance. The architecture feels civilized, even luxurious. Yet the surrounding stillness feels wrong. No servants moving. No voices. No dogs barking. Only silence. Then comes the sound. Singing. A woman's voice. Soft. Melodic. Beautiful beyond expectation. The voice drifts from inside the hall, weaving through air like warm smoke. It carries calm sophistication intelligence. Nothing monstrous. Nothing crude. Odysseus stops. His men exchange uncertain glances. The contrast unnerves them. After Cyclopes and Giants' beauty feels almost suspicious. Ancient listeners would immediately recognize another archetypal danger enchantment. Not brute force. Seduction. Transformation through desire. At the doorway stand animals. Lions. Wolves. Yet they do not attack. That is impossible. They approach the Greeks gently, tails low movements, calm, almost affectionate. One lion brushes against a sailor like a house cat seeking warmth. The men freeze. Every instinct screams wrong. Wild predators do not behave this way. Magic. The realization comes almost instantly. Odysseus feels the hairs rise on his neck. The singing continues. Warm, inviting, human. Inside the hall, firelight flickers. Shadows dance along carved walls. And for a brief moment, the scene feels dreamlike. Luxury amid wilderness. Predators behaving like pets. Music where silence ruled. The Greeks hesitate at the threshold. One scout whispers a name. Not certainty, only fear. Haruma remembered from old stories. A sorceress, a daughter of the sun, a woman skilled in roots, potions, and divine enchantment. Circe. Odysseus feels tension coil inside him. The name carries weight even in myth. Some traditions describe Circe as cruel, others as lonely, some as predator, others as teacher. Scholars remain divided over her symbolic meaning. She may represent dangerous feminine power beyond patriarchal control. She may symbolize intoxication, illusion domestication of male violence. Another interpretation sees her as transformation itself, the force that reveals hidden nature. Whatever truth lies ahead, one thing feels certain. This island holds another trial. Not of brute strength, not of escape, of identity. The singing stops. The door opens wider. Warm golden light spills across the clearing, and a woman's voice, calm as still water, speaks from within. Come inside. After everything the sea has taken, after every ship lost, every companion buried to memory, Odysseus stands at yet another threshold. Behind him lies grief. Ahead lies enchantment. And somewhere far beneath all seas, Poseidon waits patiently watching the next piece of Odysseus slowly being tested. The invitation hangs in the forest air with unnatural softness. Come inside. No threat, no urgency, no command, just welcome. And somehow that makes it more dangerous. You stand beside Odysseus at the edge of the clearing while warm light spills from the hall onto moss and stone. The lions and wolves remain calm, their golden eyes reflecting firelight with eerie intelligence. One wolf lowers itself beside the doorway as if guarding sacred ground. Another presses gently against a sailor's leg tail, moving slowly. No wild animal behaves like this. The Greeks know it. Their bodies know it before thought does. Magic saturates the air. Inside the hall, the scent is overwhelming after months at sea. Fresh bread, honey, herbs crushed in warm oil, cedar smoke, sweet wine, clean woven cloth. Civilization not merely restored but perfected. Every human longing after hardship seems gathered here into one impossible sanctuary. This matters because enchantment in Greek myth rarely works through obvious horror. It works through desire, through comfort, through hunger, through the soft promise that struggle can end. Odysseus raises one hand, stopping his men. Wait, observe. But not everyone shares his caution. One of his companions, Eurylochus, watches the hall with narrowed eyes. Eurylochus has grown increasingly important since the loss of the fleet. Practical, suspicious. Less brilliant than Odysseus, but often more cautious. Where Odysseus sees possibilities, Eurylochus sees traps. This tension between them will matter deeply. The door opens fully, and Circe appears. She is neither monstrous nor overtly divine in appearance. That is perhaps the most unsettling detail. She looks human enough to disarm fear. Beautiful, yes, but not merely in physical form. Her presence carries stillness, composure, control. Dark hair catches firelight. Fine woven garments fall in elegant folds. Her eyes hold intelligence so sharp it feels almost surgical. Ancient artists and poets struggled to describe figures like Circe because ordinary beauty was not enough. She radiates deliberate awareness. She already knows they're here. That realization lands quietly. This is not chance hospitality. She expected visitors, or sensed them. Ancient audiences often saw sorcery not as random magic, but as knowledge, especially knowledge of herbs, transformation, and hidden properties of nature. Circe embodies mastery over boundaries between animal and human instinct, and reason, appetite, and identity. She smiles, warmly, invitingly. Stranger, she says, you look tired. Simple words, deadly kindness. Most of the men enter. Odysseus does not. Not yet. That hesitation saves him. Inside, Circe moves with effortless grace. Cups are filled, bread is served. Cheese, meat, wine, honeyed mixtures all placed before exhausted sailors. Their resistance weakens instantly. Hunger has become its own vulnerability. Greek mythology repeatedly warns that deprivation lowers judgment. Men deprived long enough stop evaluating risk properly. Eurylochus hesitates near the threshold. His instincts scream warning. He remains outside. This single act of distrust preserves crucial witness. The others eat, drink, laugh nervously. Relief begins spreading through tired bodies. And then Circe moves. She lifts a polished wand. Not dramatically, almost casually. One gesture, one whisper. The transformation is immediate. The men scream, limbs twist, hands collapse into hooves, faces lengthen, voices shatter into squeals, bodies shrink and distort with horrifying speed. In seconds, men become swine. Not illusions, not symbolic visions. Transformation. Real. The pigs still possess human consciousness. That detail makes the scene terrifying. They remember. They understand. They cannot speak. Circe drives them calmly into pens, like livestock, like possessions. Outside, Eurylochus stumbles backward in horror. His breathing becomes ragged. He runs. Branches slash his arms as he sprints downhill towards shore. Back at the ship, Odysseus sees him returning alone. That sight alone chills him. Eurylochus collapses, struggling for words. At first, only fragments emerge. Gone, pigs, witch. Odysseus understands enough. His men are alive, captured, enchanted. He reaches for sword immediately. No hesitation. He will go. Eurylochus grabs his arm. For the first time, open conflict erupts between them. No. The word comes sharp, raw, human. Eurylochus's fear is sincere. If you go, you die too. This moment reveals something essential about leadership and loyalty. Eurylochus is not cowardly in a simple sense. He has survived storms, monsters, giants. His fear now comes from a rational assessment. He has seen something beyond ordinary combat. How do you fight sorcery? Odysseus pulls free. I cannot leave them. The statement is simple, yet powerful, for all his flaws, pride, secrecy, arrogance. Odysseus does not abandon his men easily. That loyalty remains real. He climbs alone towards Circe's hall. Forest shadows lengthen around him. Wind moves softly through branches. Somewhere distant birds resume singing. The contrast between natural beauty and supernatural threat becomes surreal. Then something impossible happens. A figure appears on the path. Young, radiant, effortless. Not walking so much as arriving. Odysseus stops instantly. Every instinct recognizes divinity. This is Hermes, messenger of the gods, guide of travelers, patron of cunning, god of boundaries and transitions. That last title matters most. Hermes often appears when crossings occur between life and death, ignorance and knowledge, human and divine. He smiles faintly, not warmly, knowingly, as if he understands far more than he intends to say. Ancient Greek listeners would recognize the symbolism immediately. Odysseus, master of cunning, now receives aid from the god most associated with intelligence and clever adaptation. Hermes speaks plainly. Circe will offer food and drink. It will contain enchantment. Ordinary men cannot resist. But Hermes gives Odysseus protection. From the earth he pulls a plant, small, dark root, white flower. He names it moly, a sacred herb difficult for mortals to obtain. Some modern researchers speculate the myth may preserve memory of real medicinal plants capable of counteracting hallucinogens or toxins. Others argue the plant is purely symbolic, a divine antidote to loss of reason. Hermes explains, consume this. When Circe strikes with her wand, resist. Draw your sword. Charge her. She will yield. Odysseus studies the plant. Another gift. Another warning. Another test. The pattern continues. Warning ignored brings suffering. Warning honored brings survival. This time Odysseus listens completely. Hermes vanishes as suddenly as he appeared. No farewell. No spectacle. Only absence. Odysseus continues toward the hall. The lions no longer frighten him. The wolves no longer matter. He enters. Circe welcomes him exactly as before. Warm fire, rich food, sweet wine. She watches carefully, studying him. Perhaps curious, perhaps amused. Odysseus drinks, eats, waits. Circe lifts her wand. touches him, speaks the spell. Nothing happens. For the first time her composure breaks. Surprise flashes across her face. That single moment changes power. Odysseus draws his sword. Bronze flashes in firelight. He lunges. Circe recoils. Not in theatrical terror, in genuine shock, because her certainty has failed. Hermes was right. She yields, quickly, hands raised, eyes sharp now with respect. Not fear alone. Recognition. This man is different. Very few mortals resist her. Perhaps none have before. And here the myth turns again. Violence does not follow. Something stranger does. Circe studies Odysseus and speaks words that feel half prophecy, half revelation. You must be Odysseus. His blood chills. She knows his name. Again, the power of naming returns. Identity travels ahead of him now like omen. Poseidon knows him. Monsters know him. Sorceresses know him. He is becoming more than man. He is becoming story. Circe lowers her wand. The hostility dissolves. Not completely, but enough. The relationship changes from predator and prey into something far more complicated. Ancient traditions diverge here. Some portray seduction, some negotiation, some mutual recognition between intelligence and power. What remains constant is transformation, not just of the men, of Odysseus himself. Circe restores his companions to human form. They emerge shaken, ashamed, changed by the memory of consciousness trapped in animal bodies. This symbolism runs deep. Greek philosophers later loved this episode because it externalized a profound question. What separates human from beast? Reason, language, self-control. Memory. Circe's magic reveals an uncomfortable truth. The animal's always close beneath civilization. Night deepens outside. Stars emerge above the forest. Inside Circe's hall, fire crackles softly. The immediate danger has passed. Yet another mystery opens. Why did the gods intervene to save Odysseus here? Athena's influence? Hermes' favour? Fate preserving him for greater suffering? No one can know. But before sleep claims him, Circe speaks one final warning. Her voice softens. You may leave this island alive. She pauses. Firelight flickers across her eyes. But before home, you must descend to the land of the dead. The words freeze the air. The dead. Not monster. Not storm. The underworld. Another prophecy. Another threshold. And Poseidon's curse moves quietly forward. Because now the sea is no longer his only enemy. Soon Odysseus must journey somewhere darker than any storm. Below the world itself. Morning on Circe's island arrives with deceptive peace. Sunlight spills across polished floors. Warm wind moves through cedar beams. Outside, lions rest in tall grass like oversized house cats, and wolves sleep beneath olive trees with slow, steady breathing. If you arrived now knowing nothing of the night before, you might believe this place blessed rather than dangerous. That contrast matters. Greek myth repeatedly teaches that beauty and threat are not opposites. They often coexist. The most powerful dangers rarely announce themselves with ugliness. Sometimes they offer warmth, safety, even healing. Days become weeks, then weeks become months. Ancient tradition often compresses time here, but surviving texts suggest Odysseus and his men remain with Circe far longer than they first intend, nearly a year in some versions. That detail reveals something important. Not every delay in Odysseus's journey comes through violence, some delays come through comfort. This is a quieter dimension of Poseidon's curse. Homecoming is not blocked only by storms, it is slowed by temptation to stop struggling. The men recover physically. Their bodies regain strength after famine and terror. Wounds heal, skin loses the grey pallor of exhaustion. Meals become abundant. Bread roasted meat olives, honey wine. Warm beds replace damp decks. Firelight replaces storm. Laughter gradually returns. Yet something unsettles Odysseus. Peace feels dangerous now. Not because comfort is evil. Because comfort can erase urgency. He remembers the lotus eaters. Forgetting rarely arrives dramatically. It arrives gently, softly, through delay, through tomorrow, through one more night, one more feast, one more season, That psychological insight makes this section powerful. Historians often note that the Odyssey understands procrastination almost spiritually. The greatest danger to purpose may not be opposition, it may be comfort without movement. One evening, while golden light fades over the island and smoke rises from evening fires, the crew approaches Odysseus together. Their spokesman is Eurylochus. This matters. The cautious skeptic now speaks for the group. His voice is respectful but firm. How long will we remain? No accusation. Just truth. The question lands heavily. Odysseus has no satisfying answer, because the men speak what he has avoided. They are alive. They are safe. But they are not home, and safety is not the same as fulfillment. That night Odysseus seeks Circe privately. Her hall glows under torchlight. Bronze bowls reflect fire. Shadows move softly across carved pillars. She already knows why he's come. That too feels unsettling. She studies him with quiet understanding. You wish to leave? Not a question. A recognition. Odysseus nods. Then comes the prophecy. The true reason the gods preserved him. Circe's expression changes. Warmth gives way to solemnity. There is one path remaining. Odysseus waits. Her next words stop breath. You must go to the house of Hades. Silence. Only fire crackles. Only wind moves outside. The house of Hades. The Underworld. The land of the dead. Even for Greek heroes, few journeys inspired greater dread. Ancient Greek beliefs about death evolved across centuries, but one theme remained remarkably consistent. The underworld was not desirable. It was shadow, memory without life, consciousness without warmth, identity reduced to pale echo. Even great warriors became shades. To enter alive was extraordinary. To return alive almost impossible. Odysseus's face hardens. Why? Circe answers with chilling clarity. You need knowledge no living mortal can give. Not treasure, not weapons, knowledge. The answer fits Odysseus perfectly. His greatest asset remains intelligence. Thus his next trial becomes epistemological. He must seek forbidden knowledge. Circe names the source. Tiresias, the blind prophet of Thebes. Even in death, Tiresias retains consciousness and prophetic sight. That detail fascinates scholars. Why Tiresias alone? Some interpretations suggest blindness in life prepared him for truth beyond ordinary sight. Deprived of physical vision, he learned deeper perception. The symbolism is extraordinary. Odysseus, whose flaw includes overconfidence in his own perception, must seek guidance from a blind seer. Circe explains the ritual. Sail beyond Oceanus. Reach the land where sunlight barely touches. Dig a trench. Pour offerings. Milk, honey, wine, water, barley. Then sacrifice black sheep. Blood will draw the dead. Only after Tiresias drinks may Odysseus question him. The instructions feel ritualistic, sacred, ancient. Ancient listeners would recognize such precision as religious realism. Contact with the dead required boundaries. Ritual maintained order between realms. Break the ritual. Invite catastrophe. Odysseus listens carefully. This time he interrupts only once. And after, Circe pauses. That pause becomes its own omen. Fire shifts. Wind sighs. Then she speaks the warning that matters most. When you return. The word offers hope. She believes he will survive. But survival is not safety. He will reach the island of the sun. She names Helios, whose sacred cattle graze there. Her voice sharpens. Do not touch them. Do not kill them. No matter hunger. No matter desperation. The warning feels absolute. Odysseus feels a familiar chill. Another warning. Another boundary. Another future temptation. The callback pattern tightens. Secone ignored warning. Crew opened windbag. Disaster followed. Now another sacred prohibition stands ahead. The audience already feels dread. Will they obey? Greek myth often creates retention through foreknown danger. The tragedy is not ignorance of risk. It is watching whether flawed humans resist predictable failure. Night deepens. Odysseus leaves Circe's hall carrying immense weight. He walks beneath a sky overflowing with stars. The island feels different now. less sanctuary, more threshold. Soon he must sail not toward home, but downward symbolically, if not physically, into death. Some researchers argue this descent marks the psychological centre of the Odyssey. Before Hades, Odysseus survives through cunning. After Hades, he begins transforming through knowledge. Cleverness alone cannot complete his journey. Wisdom must deepen. The next morning, preparations begin. Black sheep are selected, supplies loaded, ropes checked, water jars filled. The crew senses gravity even without full explanation. Men speak quietly, superstition thickens the air. One sailor refuses to meet Odysseus's eyes. Another prays constantly. Even Eurylochus looks shaken. Ancient sailors feared the western sea beyond familiar maps. Beyond known coastlines lay uncertainty so vast it became mythic space. The place where the living world thinned. The place where dead might gather. As departure nears, a final sorrow strikes. One of the youngest crewmen, Elpenor drunk from farewell wine, sleeps on Circe's roof. At dawn, startled awake by sudden movement, still dazed with sleep and drink, he stumbles. One step. Misjudged. He falls. The crack of his neck against stone is instant. Death. Sudden. Absurd. Unceremonious. This detail has haunted readers for centuries. Why include such a strange death? Because mythology often reminds you mortality does not always arrive heroically. Great wars kill many, but careless moments kill too. Life remains fragile even between epic events. Worse still, in the rush of departure no one notices. Elpenor's body remains behind. Unburied. Unmourned. Ancient audiences would feel immediate dread. Improper burial means restless spirit. Another unresolved thread enters the story. The ship launches. Circe stands on shore garments, moving in wind, watching silently. No dramatic farewell. No promise. Only knowing stillness. The sea opens before them. Westward. Toward darkness. Toward Oceanus. Toward the edge where living memory meets death. Night falls as they sail. Stars blaze overhead. No storm comes. No violent wind. Only eerie calm. Sometimes calm before the underworld feels more frightening than chaos. Odysseus stands alone at the bow. Cold spray touches his face. Ahead the horizon seems wrong. Darker. Too dark, as if night gathers there more thickly than elsewhere. Then the first sign appears. Birdsong stops, completely. No gulls. No seabirds. No sound. Only oars. Only water. Only silence. The world itself seems to hold breath. The descent has begun. The sea ahead no longer feels like the sea you know. That is the first true terror. Water still moves beneath the hull, oars still rise and fall. Cold spray still touches skin, yet something essential has changed. The world itself feels thinner, as though the boundary between the living and the dead has begun to dissolve. You stand with Odysseus at the bow while darkness gathers unnaturally around the ship. No dawn comes, no sunrise colours the horizon. Instead, a grey-black twilight stretches endlessly in every direction. The air grows colder with each mile. Not the sharp cold of winter wind, but a deep cold, old and dry, like stone sealed from sunlight for centuries. Ancient Greeks imagined the realm of Hades not primarily as fiery torment, but as shadow. Later traditions introduced more elaborate moral divisions, but early Greek imagination focused on dim persistence. The dead did not simply vanish. They continued as shades, thin echoes of identity memory without warmth, consciousness without life. This made the underworld tragic rather than purely horrific. Death was not always pain, it was diminishment. At last, the ship reaches the land Circe described. The shoreline is barren, colourless, almost featureless under perpetual gloom. No birds nest here. No trees bend in wind. No grass moves. Even sound behaves strangely. Footsteps on ash-coloured ground feel muffled, as if the earth itself absorbs vibration. The smell is almost absent. No salt, no pine, no flowers. Only mineral cold and faint metallic bitterness like old iron and wet stone. The crew refuses to move farther than necessary. Fear roots them near the ship. Odysseus alone carries the ritual tools inland with 2 companions assisting in silence. His hands move with deliberate precision, recalling every instruction Circe gave. Dig the trench, pour the offerings. Milk mixed with honey first, then wine, then water, then barley scattered across the earth. The ritual feels mechanical at first, then sacred, then dangerous. He draws his sword and sacrifices the black sheep. Warm blood pours into the trench, and the world changes. The ground does not shake. No thunder sounds. No dramatic divine light appears. Instead, the darkness thickens. Then comes sound, whispers, hundreds, no, thousands. Not words at first, breaths, murmurs, fragments of longing. The hairs rise along Odysseus's arms. His companions stagger backward, nearly dropping their torches. From beyond, the visible dark shapes begin gathering. Shades. The dead are coming. Ancient audiences would have felt profound unease here because blood in Greek ritual symbolized life force itself. The dead lacking vitality are drawn to blood like starving minds drawn toward memory. Blood briefly restores awareness. The first shades arrive as grey outlines barely human, thin, drifting, faces half-formed bodies insubstantial yet unmistakably conscious. They swarm toward the trench with terrible hunger. Odysseus raises his sword. Circe warned him. No shade drinks before Tiresias. Hold them back! This becomes unexpectedly agonizing, because among the countless dead familiar faces emerge. Warriors from Troy. Old allies. Former enemies. Men whose names he buried years ago. Then he sees her. His mother, Anticlea. Odysseus freezes. She stands at the edge of the trench, pale and sorrowful, yet unmistakably herself. The curve of her face, the way her head tilts slightly when studying him. Memory strikes like a spear. He never knew she died. That realization nearly breaks him. He wants to run forward, to embrace, to speak, to ask everything. But ritual must hold. Sword trembling, he keeps her back. This is one of the cruelest moments in the myth. Not battle, not monsters, restraint before love. Ancient Greek listeners understood filial duty deeply. To deny one's mother even temporary comfort feels unbearable. Yet Odysseus must wait. Then another presence approaches. Different, heavier, more focused, not drifting. Advancing. The shades part. A figure emerges holding prophetic gravity even in death. Blind eyes. Ancient bearing. Authority untouched by mortality. Tiresias. Odysseus lowers the sword. The prophet drinks. Blood touches dead lips. Awareness sharpens instantly. His voice comes clear, alive with terrifying intelligence. Odysseus. The prophet already knows him. Again naming matters. Tiresias studies him as though seeing beyond flesh. Then comes the prophecy. Not loud, not theatrical. Calm, certain. You seek home. Odysseus says nothing. Tiresias continues. Poseidon seeks suffering. Simple, direct. No illusion remains. The prophet confirms what Odysseus already fears. The sea god's hatred is real, deliberate, enduring. Then comes deeper warning. You wounded his son. Pause. He will make the sea your enemy. Another pause. But home is still possible. Hope enters. Brief. Fragile. Then the cost. You must master yourself. Those words strike harder than expected. Not defeat monsters. Not win battles. Master yourself. The prophecy suddenly becomes psychological. Odysseus's greatest enemy may not be Poseidon alone. It may be Odysseus. Tiresias speaks of Helios's sacred cattle. The warning returns now reinforced. Do not harm them, no matter hunger, no matter need. If the cattle are spared, suffering continues, but survival remains possible. If harmed, destruction. Complete. Ancient storytelling often repeats warnings deliberately. Repetition signals destiny. Every repetition raises tension. The audience already knows this future temptation will matter enormously. Then Tiresias gives final prophecy. This part often fascinates historians because it extends beyond the failure homecoming. Even after Ithaca, Odysseus' journey will not fully end. He must one day carry an oar inland until meeting people who know nothing of the sea. Only there may he make peace with Poseidon. This strange prophecy feels symbolic. Some scholars interpret it as spiritual reconciliation. Odysseus must journey beyond the domain of his trauma before true peace becomes possible. The prophet finishes. The blood's power fades. Tiresias withdraws. Shadow reclaims him. Gone, the trench remains surrounded by the dead. Now Odysseus turns toward his mother, sword lowered. She drinks. Colour strengthens slightly. Recognition blooms. My son. 2 words, enough to break him. Odysseus falls to his knees. Questions flood out. When? How? Why didn't I know? Her answer wounds quietly. She didn't die by sickness, nor violence, nor divine punishment. She died waiting. Waiting for him. Grief, longing, absence. These killed her. This revelation devastates, because it transforms homecoming itself. Ithaca is no longer preserved in time. Loss has already entered his house. Poseidon's curse stretches beyond sea. It touches family, memory, time. Odysseus reaches toward her. He tries to embrace her. His arms pass through mist. Nothing. No warmth. No body. Only emptiness. He tries again, and again. 3 times. 3 failures. Ancient Greek poets loved this repeated gesture because repetition deepens pain. Love remains. Touch is gone. His mother explains the truth of death. The dead possess no flesh, only image, only shadow, only memory. The underworld strips away physical certainty. Here love cannot hold. Only remember. Around them more shades gather. Famous warriors, kings, companions. Some researchers argue this section functioned partly as oral memorial tradition, preserving heroic memory across generations. Myth becomes archive of the dead. Odysseus speaks with many. Each encounter teaches variation on one truth. Glory fades. Power fades. Beauty fades. Mortality wins. Then comes perhaps the most famous encounter. Achilles, greatest warrior of Troy. Still magnificent. Still unmistakable. Odysseus praises his glory among the dead. Achilles answers with devastating honesty. Do not praise death. He would rather live as poor servant on earth than rule all shades below. The statement shattered heroic assumptions for many ancient listeners. Even supreme glory cannot compensate for lost life. Mortality, however humble, contains something death cannot replicate. Warmth, touch, breath, sunlight. Odysseus absorbs this deeply. The underworld teaches not strategy, but value. Life's fragility makes life precious. At last the crowd thickens dangerously. Too many shades press toward blood. Hunger grows frantic. Panic rises among Odysseus's companions. Time is ending. He retreats toward shore. The whispers become louder. Hands of shadow reach. Names are called, some familiar, some unknown. The dead do not want the living to linger. Odysseus reaches the ship. His men shove off immediately. Oars bite dark water. As shore recedes, the grey land slowly dissolves into mist. Only then does sound begin returning. First wind, then distant birds, then sea. The world of the living closes around them once more, but Odysseus is no longer the same. He has seen the dead, spoken to his mother, heard prophecy, learned a terrible truth. Home is not merely a place to return. It is a place already changing without you. And somewhere beneath the waves, Poseidon remains patient. Because now the god understands something too. Odysseus has gained knowledge, but knowledge alone does not save flawed men. Soon the real test begins. Not prophecy, choice. When the ship leaves the shores of the dead, the sea feels alive in a way it has not for many days. Wind returns first cool and salt-rich. Then sound returns, gulls crying in the distance rope, creaking against wood waves, striking the hull with familiar rhythm. Even sunlight feels startling after the grey stillness of Hades. Yet Odysseus does not experience relief in the way his men do. You can feel it in the way he stands now. More still, more inward. The underworld has changed the texture of his mind. Before Hades, he fought primarily to survive. After Hades' survival becomes tangled with meaning, he now carries knowledge no ordinary man should possess. He knows his mother died waiting. He knows even great heroes envy the living. He knows home is real yet altered. Most of all, he knows prophecy doesn't remove choice. It clarifies consequences. The ship returns to Circe for final guidance as she instructed. Her island feels quieter now, almost solemn. Even the lions and wolves seem less uncanny. Perhaps the true strangeness lies no longer in the island, but in Odysseus himself. Circe sees the change immediately. She needs no explanation. She reads it in his face. That is one reason ancient storytellers made her such a compelling figure. She recognizes transformations before men speak them. She prepares food, wine, and fire once more. But there is no lingering comfort now. The time for rest has ended. The path ahead narrows. Circe begins listing the trials still waiting across Poseidon's waters. The Sirens, Scylla, Charybdis, and beyond them Helios' sacred cattle. Each warning lands with increasing weight. Ancient Greek audiences would understand this sequence as ritual escalation. Odysseus is no longer wandering randomly. He moves through structured trials of desire, sacrifice, and self-mastery. The first danger is the Sirens. Circe's voice lowers. Their song destroys not by force but by longing. That line matters. Not claws, not storms, longing, desire, knowledge. The Sirens call sailors not with simple beauty but with irresistible understanding. They promise revelation. They promise to tell everything. They promise knowledge beyond mortal reach. This is why the Sirens are especially dangerous for Odysseus. He is not ruled by appetite alone. He is ruled by curiosity. Circe understands this, perhaps better than he does. She gives precise instructions. Melt beeswax. Plug every sailor's ears. If Odysseus himself wishes to hear the song, he must be tied to the mast, bound completely. No matter what he says while listening, the crew must not release him. If he begs, tighten the ropes. Another warning. Another structure. Another test where obedience determines survival. The next morning they sail. The sea appears strangely peaceful. Too peaceful. This has become its own omen. Odysseus orders beeswax softened over flame. Warm wax smells faintly sweet as men press it into each other's ears. Conversation fades as hearing disappears among the crew. Soon only Odysseus remains unsealed. Then comes the strange part. He gives an order few kings would willingly give. Bind me. The men hesitate. Even Eurylochus looks uneasy. To tie one's captain feels wrong. To restrain a king violates instinct. But Odysseus insists. Rope wraps around wrists, chest, waist, legs. They lash him tightly against the central mast. Wood presses into his spine. The symbolism here is profound. Scholars often note that this may be one of the earliest literary depictions of voluntary restraint against one's future self. Odysseus understands something psychologically sophisticated. Future desire may overpower present reason. Therefore, present reason must create constraints. He prepares not to resist temptation through willpower alone, but through structure. Ancient myth becomes startlingly modern here. The ship enters mist. No visible boundary marks, siren waters. That is important. Danger arrives gradually. First the sea becomes glass-like. Then wind vanishes. Then birds disappear. No gulls. No fish breaking surface. No sound except water along the hull. Then, music. Soft at first. So soft Odysseus almost doubts hearing it. Then clearer. Voices. Female. Layered. Impossible. Not merely beautiful. Perfectly tuned to human longing. This distinction matters. Beauty alone does not explain the Sirens. Their song becomes irresistible because it feels personalized. They sing to Odysseus directly. They know him. Again the motif of naming returns. Odysseus. His breath catches. How do they know? The voices glide across still air. They promise understanding. They promise truth. They promise knowledge hidden from gods and men. They sing of Troy, of heroes, of secrets buried in divine councils, of every unanswered question haunting him. Why did gods choose favourites? What truly happened at Troy's beginning? Which futures remain unwritten? What waits after death? The song attacks precisely where Odysseus is weakest. Not lust, knowledge, curiosity, understanding. His body reacts instantly. Every muscle strains. He pulls against the ropes. The mast groans. Panic enters his eyes. The crew rows on deaf to the voices. Odysseus screams, not in pain, in need. Release me. Now he must know. He must hear more. The song deepens. The sirens now offer something even crueler. Home. They sing of Penelope, Telemachus, Ithaca's hills. They promise he can know everything waiting there. No uncertainty, no anxiety, complete certainty. The temptation becomes unbearable. Ancient Greek listeners would recognize the irony immediately. The man who survived Cyclops, giants, and Hades may fall to knowledge itself. Odysseus thrashes violently. Blood rises where ropes cut skin. He screams commands at his crew, orders, threats. Please, release me, release me. But the men obey earlier instruction. They row harder. Eurylochus sees Odysseus' desperation and does exactly what Circe commanded. He tightens the ropes. Odysseus cries out in fury. For a moment, hatred flashes in his eyes. This is important. Temptation temporarily transforms him. Reason vanishes. Only desire remains. The sirens continue singing. They sense weakening. Their voices become intimate now. Tender. Understanding. No monster's hunger. Only invitation. Rest. No? Stop struggling. The call back to the Lotus Eaters becomes clear. Different form. Same essence. Abandon striving. Surrender. Let longing end. That is what makes sirens mythologically powerful. They embody the seductive promise of final answers. No uncertainty, no pain, no striving. Just surrender into certainty. But certainty can kill growth. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the voices weaken. Distance increases. Mist thins. Wind returns. The song fades. Odysseus collapses against the mast. Sweat-soaked. Bleeding. Breathing like a man dragged from drowning. The spell breaks. Awareness returns. Shame follows. He remembers everything he shouted. Everything he felt. Everything he nearly chose. His eyes meet Eurylochus. No words are exchanged. None needed. The ropes are cut. Odysseus falls to his knees on the deck, hands trembling. Ancient scholars love this scene because it reveals profound truth about self-knowledge. Wisdom is not merely intelligence, it includes recognizing where you are vulnerable. Odysseus survived because he accepted limitation, because he admitted he could not safely trust himself. That is growth, real growth. Yet the calm does not last. Circe warned of what comes next. And unlike the sirens, the next danger offers no seductive song, only impossible choice. Far ahead, between narrowing cliffs, mist begins spiraling upward. The water changes. Currents pull strangely. The ship trembles. Odysseus rises slowly. He already knows. Scylla, Charybdis. 2 horrors, 1 passage. No perfect path. The most painful lesson of leadership is approaching. Sometimes intelligence cannot find a solution without loss. Sometimes every available choice carries suffering. And Poseidon's curse moves deeper still. Because the sea god understands something terrible. The hardest punishments are not those that threaten death. They are those that force impossible decisions and make you live with them. The sea narrows ahead into a passage that seems almost carved from nightmare. 2 cliffs rise on opposite sides, black and sheer, their upper reaches disappearing into cloud and mist. Sunlight reaches this place only in broken fragments. The air feels colder here, heavier. The water beneath the ship no longer moves with natural rhythm. It twists, pulls, shudders. Even before Odysseus sees either monster, he feels their presence through the behavior of the sea itself. Ancient Greeks often treated geography as living theology. Dangerous places were not merely locations, they were embodiments of divine truths. This strait becomes exactly that, a place where every option carries pain. Circe's warning returns to him with painful clarity. On one side waits Charybdis, a monstrous force that swallows the sea itself 3 times each day, then vomits it back in catastrophic violence. Not a beast with visible limbs or face, but something more terrifying in its abstraction. Consumption, absorption, total disappearance. On the opposite cliff lurks Scylla, a flesh-and-blood horror hidden in shadow with multiple snapping heads that sees sailors from passing decks. Circe had told him something he did not want to hear. Sail closer to Scylla, lose a few men, avoid Charybdis. Because Charybdis takes everything. That instruction reveals a brutal truth about leadership. Sometimes wisdom is not choosing good over bad. It is choosing lesser catastrophe. Modern minds resist this instinctively. We want solutions where everyone survives. Greek tragedy repeatedly rejects that fantasy. Some situations offer only constrained suffering. Odysseus hates this, more than Cyclopes, more than Sirens, because this challenge attacks his identity. His greatest pride has always been problem-solving. Find the clever path. Create the unexpected solution. Save everyone. But here no hidden path exists. Circe gave no riddle, only arithmetic. Lose 6, or lose all. He has told the crew only part of the truth. He warns them about dangerous currents and commands absolute discipline. Oars steady, eyes forward, no panic. But he does not mention Scylla directly. This concealment will haunt him. Some scholars fiercely debate this decision. Was Odysseus protecting morale or denying men the dignity of knowing? The text deliberately leaves moral discomfort unresolved. The ship enters the strait. Immediately the atmosphere changes. Sound distorts. Water slams against stone with thunderous force. Echoes multiply until every splash feels enormous. Mist swirls upward from jagged rock. Salt spray burns eyes and lips. Wind funnels between cliffs in violent bursts. Then they hear it. The sound of Charybdis. A roar. Deep. Rotational. Not animal. Hydraulic. Cosmic. Ahead to starboard the sea collapses inward. A whirlpool. Massive. Water spins into descending funnel with impossible force dragging foam driftward and entire currents downward into black centre. The sight overwhelms the mind. It feels less like water and more like reality being swallowed. Men freeze in horror. One drops his oar. Another begins praying aloud to every god he can name. Odysseus shouts, "Row!" The command snaps them back. They pull desperately. Muscles strain. Oars bite water. The ship angles away from Charybdis toward the opposite cliff. Towards Scylla. Towards sacrifice. This is the cruel brilliance of the scene. To avoid visible annihilation, they move toward hidden horror. Odysseus grips spear and sword despite Circe's warning that weapons are useless. Part of him still refuses total helplessness. That refusal feels deeply human. Even when warned that force cannot help, we cling to action. He scans the cliffs. Nothing. Only dark stone. Only caves. Only mist. That makes it worse. Invisible threat creates maximum tension. The crew rows harder. Closer. Closer to cliff. The roar of Charybdis remains behind them, but another silence forms ahead. An unnatural pocket of quiet. Ancient audiences understood silence as omen. Silence before predation feels older than language. Then it happens. Fast. Too fast. From a cave high above, shapes explode downward. Heads. Necks. Too many. 6 serpent-like necks ending in monstrous jaws lined with curved teeth. Eyes burning with predatory intelligence. Each head strikes independently. No warning. No build-up. Impact. Screams. One sailor vanishes instantly. Then another. Then another. Scylla does not attack the ship. She harvests men. Precision. Selection. Consumption. This detail matters profoundly. She's not chaotic destruction like Charybdis. She is targeted loss. Odysseus swings his spear upward. Useless. Bronze meets empty air. The heads are already retracting. Men disappear screaming into the cave. 6. Exactly 6. The prophecy fulfilled with cruel precision. Odysseus hears their cries. He sees their hands reaching. He sees terror in their eyes. And he cannot save them. This becomes one of the defining traumas of his journey. Not because many die, because he watches, because he knows, because he chose this path. The ship surges forward out of range. The attack ends almost instantly. That brevity deepens horror. 6 lives erased in seconds. No battle, no heroics, only selection and loss. Silence follows. Then screaming, not from Scylla now, from the crew. Grief, shock, rage. Men look at the empty spaces where companions sat moments ago. One oar drifts unmanned. Another falls into water. Odysseus stands frozen. Ancient Greek storytelling rarely lingers sentimentally, yet emotional devastation radiates through restraint. No dramatic speech is needed. The absence says everything. Eurylochus stares at him, and something passes between them. Understanding. He knew, or at least suspects. Odysseus knew. That suspicion wounds more than accusation, because it is true. Odysseus did know men would die. He chose not to tell them. This is leadership at its darkest. Not failure of intelligence, success through sacrifice. Some modern interpreters see this episode as the deepest moral challenge in the Odyssey. Cleverness cannot remove loss. Wisdom cannot prevent pain. Leadership sometimes means bearing guilt no one else fully understands. The ship clears the strait. Behind them, Charybdis continues roaring. Above, Scylla disappears into shadow. The monsters recede. The suffering does not. The crew rows in numb silence. No prayers. No songs. No whispered names. Grief has moved beyond language. Odysseus lowers his weapons. His hands shake, not from physical exhaustion, from helplessness. This feeling is new. Not total helplessness, he saved most of them, but partial helplessness, enough to shatter heroic illusions. He remembers Tiresias, master yourself. Now the prophecy feels clearer. Self-mastery is not merely resisting temptation. It includes enduring guilt without collapsing. The sea gradually widens again. Sunlight returns. Warmth touches the deck. Ordinary beauty feels almost offensive after horror. One sailor begins sobbing, quietly, then another. No one comforts them. Everyone is grieving something slightly different. Lost friends, lost certainty, lost trust. Odysseus turns toward the horizon. Ahead lies the island of the sun. Helios' cattle. The warning returns. Do not touch them. The repetition grows oppressive. Ancient retention systems in oral storytelling often worked through accumulating inevitability. Each reminder increases dread because listeners understand the probability of failure. Odysseus knows his men are weakened, hungry, traumatized, angry, exhausted. This matters. Temptation succeeds best when will is depleted. Poseidon understands this. He is not merely throwing obstacles, he is shaping psychological conditions, breaking resilience, reducing discipline, eroding judgment, and Odysseus begins to see the deeper cruelty of the curse. Poseidon does not want only suffering. He wants corruption. He wants Odysseus forced into choices that scar the soul. The sun lowers toward evening. Golden light spreads across calmer waters. In the distance, land appears. Gentle hills, green pastures, beautiful, peaceful, almost sacred. Too sacred. Odysseus feels dread before recognition. Then memory strikes. Helios, the island, the cattle, another warning, another test. But now the circumstances are worse than ever. The crew is starving, broken, grieving, and starvation has a way of making sacred laws feel negotiable. That is the terror waiting on the shore. Not monster, not storm, hunger. Because hunger asks one question more dangerous than prophecy. What principles remain when survival demands violation? The island appears almost impossibly serene after the violence of Scylla and Charybdis. Soft green slopes roll toward the shore. Golden grasses move in slow wind. White clouds drift across an open blue sky. No jagged cliffs, no dark caves, no roaring currents, only sunlight, endless sunlight. Even before landing, you feel why the place belongs to Helios. Light here behaves differently. It seems richer, heavier, almost sacred, as though every blade of grass stores fire within it. Across the meadows, cattle graze in peaceful silence. Their hides gleam like polished bronze and ivory beneath the sun. They are beautiful animals, unnaturally healthy, almost luminous. Odysseus feels dread immediately. The warning returns with merciless clarity. Circe, Tiresias, 2 independent prophecies. Same command, do not touch the cattle. Ancient audiences would already feel unbearable tension. Repeated warnings in myth rarely exist to reassure. They exist to intensify inevitable failure. The crew, however, sees something else. Food, meat, survival. Odysseus gathers them before landing. His voice hardens with unusual force. He does not soften the message. No ambiguity, no partial truth. For once he tells them everything. The cattle are sacred. They belong to Helios. Harm them and destruction follows. Hunger is preferable to sacrilege. This decision matters. After Scylla, after secrecy, he changes. He chooses transparency. Perhaps too late. Still, growth matters even when circumstances worsen. The men listen. Some nod. Some avoid eye contact. Eurylochus remains unreadable. That unreadability becomes dangerous. They swear an oath. No cattle. No hunting them. No slaughter. Only existing supplies. The oath is solemn. Ancient Greeks took oaths seriously. Words spoken before gods carried metaphysical weight. To swear falsely was not merely dishonesty, it invited divine consequence. They land. For a while discipline holds. They ration grain, dry stores, fish when possible, water from inland springs. Days pass, then Poseidon moves, not with storm at first, with wind, relentless contrary wind. The ship cannot leave. Every attempt to sail fails, gusts drive them back to shore. Days become weeks, supplies shrink. Weather traps them on the island. Here the curse reveals deeper intelligence. Poseidon does not simply attack. He creates conditions where failure becomes probable. Starvation, delay, hopeless repetition. Willpower erodes. Ancient myth repeatedly understands what modern psychology confirms: prolonged deprivation alters moral reasoning. Hunger shrinks abstraction. Sacred principles weaken under physical desperation. Food runs low. They're nearly gone. The men begin scavenging. Birds, small fish, roots, anything edible. Still insufficient. Bodies weaken. Faces hollow. Eyes darken. Muscles shrink. The sacred cattle remain visible every day. Always near. Always abundant. Always forbidden. This constant proximity becomes psychological torture. The cattle graze peacefully while men starve. One sailor stops looking at Odysseus entirely. Another stares too long at the herds. A third mutters in sleep about roasted meat. Hunger colonizes thought. Odysseus feels tension rising. He prays constantly now. To Zeus, to Athena, even to Helios. Mercy, deliverance, wind change, anything. No answer. Silence from heaven becomes its own pressure. Then comes the breaking point. One afternoon, exhausted beyond endurance, Odysseus walks inland alone to pray. This decision proves catastrophic. He seeks distance from desperation, sacred solitude, perhaps clarity. Instead, exhaustion overcomes him. He sleeps, not ordinary sleep. Heavy, sudden, almost imposed. Some later interpreters suspected divine interference here. Did a god force sleep? Did Poseidon seize opportunity? The text leaves mystery unresolved. While Odysseus sleeps, Eurylochus rises. The men gather around him. This is the most important speech of his life. He looks at starving sailors, sunken cheeks, cracked lips, shaking hands, then speaks with cold logic. All deaths are hateful. Pause. But the worst death. He looks toward the cattle. Is death by hunger? The argument is devastating because it contains truth. Hunger dehumanizes. Slowly, cruelly, Eurylochus continues. Sacrifice the cattle. Offer the finest portions to gods. Promise temples to Helios later. If punishment comes, better quick drowning than slow starvation. This reasoning reveals moral collapse disguised as practicality. Greek tragedy excels at this. Wrong choices often sound rational under pressure. That is what makes them dangerous. The men hesitate. Oaths matter. Sacrilege terrifies them, but hunger speaks louder. One by one, resistance falls. Ancient listeners would feel dreadful inevitability here. The repeated warning makes failure feel tragic rather than surprising. They choose. The cattle are driven together. Beautiful sacred animals low softly unaware. Knives rise. Blood spills. The first slaughter changes the atmosphere instantly. Even nature reacts. Some traditions say the hides crawled after skinning. Some say roasted meat mooed on spits. Others describe eerie voices in the wind. Historians continue debating whether these details were later embellishments, but their symbolic function is obvious. Sacrilege disturbs reality itself. The men feast. Grease drips. Fat crackles over flame. Smoke rises toward heaven. After starvation, the smell becomes overwhelming. Roasted flesh. Burning fat. Salt. Warmth. The sailors eat with desperate intensity. No celebration. No joy. Only animal hunger. That matters. The transformation completes. Circe turned men into swine through magic. Hunger turns them into beasts through choice. The callback is devastating. Magic revealed hidden animal nature. Now deprivation confirms it. Far above Helios sees. Ancient Greeks imagined gods as relational beings sensitive to honour. Sacred property mattered because it reflected status and worship. Helios burns with outrage. He ascends to Olympus. Before Zeus, he makes his demand. Punish them, or he will refuse to shine upon gods and mortals. The threat matters cosmically. No sun means collapse of order. Zeus responds, justice will come. Simple, certain. Meanwhile, Odysseus wakes. Immediately something feels wrong. Smoke. Meat. The scent hits before sight. His blood freezes. He runs. Too late. Bones. Grease. Hides. Ash. His men look up. Guilty. Ashamed. Afraid. No denial possible. For a long moment, Odysseus cannot speak. Ancient epic often becomes most powerful in silence. What words remain after prophecy fulfilled? At last he understands. The destruction is now inevitable. Not probable. Inevitable. The warnings were clear. Repeated. Ignored. He feels something terrible. Not rage. Exhaustion. A hollow grief deeper than anger. Because this failure transcends leadership. He warned them. Twice warned by prophecy. Oaths sworn. Still broken. There are catastrophes intelligence cannot prevent. The wind changes 7 days later. At last, freedom to sail. Cruel freedom, because escape now means movement toward punishment. The men launch eagerly. Hope flickers again. Perhaps disaster can still be avoided. Perhaps sacrifice satisfied Helios. Perhaps mercy exists. Odysseus says little. He knows better. The ship leaves sacred shore. Open sea ahead. Blue sky above. For a few hours, peace. Then afternoon darkens. Too quickly. Clouds gather with divine speed. Thunder rolls. The crew stiffens. No one speaks. They know. This is not weather. This is judgment. Lightning flickers inside clouds. Not random. Focused. Targeted. Odysseus stands amid rising wind. Rain begins. Cold. Sharp. Then the sky tears open. A thunderbolt falls. Thrown by Zeus. Direct. Blinding white fire strikes the mast. Explosion. Wood shatters. Flame erupts. The ship splits. Men scream. Fire meets seawater in hissing steam. The deck collapses. Bodies thrown. Rope snaps. Timbers break apart. Poseidon's curse reaches another milestone. Return alone. The prophecy unfolds with merciless precision. Odysseus is thrown into black water amid wreckage. Around him companions vanish into storm and foam. No rescue possible. No commands matter. No strategy remains. Only survival. Only fragments. Only sea. And one terrible truth. He is almost alone now. Exactly as Polyphemus prayed, the storm does not end with noise. It ends with absence. One moment the world is fire-splintered wood, screaming men and collapsing sky. The next there is only water, cold, endless, indifferent. You find yourself with Odysseus not on a ship but in the aftermath of one. Timbers drift around him like broken bones of a larger creature. Sailcloth sinks slowly beneath waves. The smell of burned wood fades into salt. Lightning still flickers far away, but the violence has moved on. What remains is silence so complete it feels unnatural. Odysseus treads water in darkness. His hands search for anything solid. A plank, a rope, a fragment of mast. Around him the sea swallows everything. Men call out his name, but their voices weaken, quickly dissolving into wind and foam. Some cries cut off suddenly, others fade into distance. He does not see most of them die. That is its own kind of punishment. Ancient storytellers understood this deeply. Witnessing death is painful, but witnessing disappearance without closure is worse. It leaves the mind unfinished. He finds a fragment of wood large enough to hold him. Not salvation, only delay. He climbs onto it, chest heaving, salt burning his throat. The ocean stretches in every direction. No land visible, no stars visible. Only clouded sky pressing down like stone. This is the moment the curse becomes absolute in feeling rather than prophecy. Poseidon is no longer distant. He's present in every wave, every current, every refusal of the sea to become still. Odysseus understands something now that no earlier trial fully revealed. Cyclopes could be outwitted. Sirens could be restrained. Monsters could be bypassed. Even divine gifts could be misused. But the sea itself cannot be escaped. It surrounds him completely. It is not a place you pass through. It is a force that decides whether you pass at all. For 3 days he drifts. Exhaustion blurs time. Sun rises and falls without meaning. Rain comes and goes. Hunger and thirst begin their slow work. At times he slips into half-sleep, then wakes suddenly as waves crash over him. Each awakening feels like returning from a smaller death. Ancient Greek imagination often placed the boundary between life and death not as a single moment, but as a thinning. Odysseus is now in that thinning. On the 4th day, something changes. The sea grows strangely calm, not peaceful, suspended. The wind shifts direction without warning. Currents pull differently. Odysseus lifts his head weakly. In the distance, something rises from the horizon. Not land yet, not fully formed. A suggestion of shape within mist. He does not trust it. He has learned not to trust calm. But there is no choice. He has no direction left. The current carries him. Closer, closer. A coastline emerges, rocky, wild, unknown. Waves crash violently against cliffs, but somewhere between them a narrow inlet opens. Against all expectation, the fragment of wood carries him toward it. He does not steer. He endures. The sea delivers him like an exhausted verdict. Then, as suddenly as it began, motion stops. The wood strikes shallow ground, sand, stones, shallow surf. Odysseus collapses forward into knee-deep water, coughing, vomiting salt, barely conscious. His body shakes uncontrollably. For a long time he simply lies there, half in water, half on land, unable to distinguish between survival and exhaustion. Above him cliffs rise, wind moves through dry grass, birds circle overhead again. Sound returns slowly, life returns slowly. The world is not gone. It continues without him. Ancient listeners would recognize this moment as liminal, not arrival, not safety. Only pause. Odysseus drags himself onto shore. Each movement costs effort beyond thought. He lies on sand and closes his eyes. For the first time in many days, no immediate danger surrounds him. No storm, no monster, no crew. Only silence. An absence. That absence carries weight, because now he understands the full meaning of the curse. Not death, not destruction, reduction. One by one, everything removed until only he remains. He thinks of the men lost. Cyclops Cave, Scylla's Cliff. Storm at sea, Helios cattle. Each loss returns like wave after wave of memory. He is alive, but survival feels unfinished. Night approaches. Cold settles into the shore. Odysseus has no shelter, no fire, no food, only body and breath. He wraps himself in torn remnants of cloth still clinging to his armour. His thoughts drift between waking and sleep. At some point he hears something. Not voice, not wind, laughter, faint, impossible to locate. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Not mocking, not joyful, something older, detached. He opens his eyes. Nothing is there. Only sea, only night. Yet the feeling remains, as if the world itself is aware of him, as if something beyond sight is watching the final stage of his journey begin. Far away beyond mortal perception, myths say gods do not sleep. They observe, they wait, they remember. And Poseidon, though distant in form, is no longer distant in consequence. Because now Odysseus is no longer sailing. He is being returned. Not to home, not yet, but to something that will test whether home is even possible anymore. The next morning he wakes to wind again, gentle at first, then steady. It moves inland carrying scent of pine and earth. Somewhere ahead unseen lies another island. Not punishment this time, not yet, something different. A place where survival becomes rest, or illusion of rest. Odysseus does not know which. He rises slowly. His body still trembles from exhaustion, but he moves forward anyway, because that is what remains. Movement. Always movement, and somewhere beneath the waves behind him the sea continues to remember every name it has taken. The wind carries Odysseus inland like something half forgotten by the sea. He does not walk so much as stagger forward each step, cutting into sand and stone with exhausted certainty. His body is still heavy with salt. His skin is burned from sun and storm. His mind drifts in and out of clarity as though even thought requires permission to continue. Around him, the island rises in gentle slopes rather than violent cliffs. Forest replaces rock. Green replaces grey. It feels at first like mercy. But after everything he's endured, Odysseus no longer trusts mercy that arrives too easily. The air is warmer here, softer. The smell of wild flowers mixes with fresh water from hidden springs. Birds return in quiet flocks. Their calls are calm, almost musical. Streams run through shaded groves where light filters in broken gold. It is beautiful in a way that feels deliberately composed. Not wild like the island of Scylla, not chaotic like storms at sea. This place feels arranged. He collapses beneath an olive tree, and for a long time he simply breathes. No monsters appear, no voices call, no warnings arrive, only stillness. That stillness becomes the first strange sign. Time passes differently here. Odysseus cannot tell whether it is hours or days before he hears movement again. When he finally opens his eyes, he is no longer alone. She stands at a distance first, partially hidden among trees. Not threatening, not hiding, observing. Her presence changes the atmosphere without effort, as though the island itself acknowledges her. She's both part of it and separate from it. This is Calypso. Her beauty is not dramatic in the way mortals imagine divine beings. It is quieter, more complete. There is no urgency in her movement, no tension in her posture. She does not seem like someone who needs anything from the world. That alone unsettles Odysseus more than hostility ever could. She approaches slowly. No guards. No weapons. Only calm certainty. "You're safe," she says. The words are simple, yet they carry something unfamiliar after years of war monsters and curses. Safety is no longer a concept Odysseus fully trusts. He looks at her cautiously, trying to understand where danger might be hidden. There is none visible. That is the danger. Ancient Greek imagination often treated islands as thresholds between worlds, not fully human, not fully divine. Places where reality could be softened, reshaped, suspended. Calypso's island belongs to this category. It does not demand survival, it offers permanence. She brings him food, warm bread, fresh fruit, clean water, simple things that feel almost sacred after deprivation. He eats, not because he trusts her, because his body no longer has the luxury of refusal. Days pass, then weeks. Then something strange happens. Odysseus begins to recover, not just physically, mentally. His wounds close, His strength returns, his vision sharpens. He can walk long distances again without collapsing. The island heals him in ways no medicine at sea ever could. There is no hunger here, no war, no exhaustion. The environment itself seems tuned to sustain life effortlessly, and yet something inside him remains restless, because stillness when prolonged begins to feel like another form of captivity. Calypso does not hide her intention. She offers him something no mortal king would easily refuse. Immortality. Stay here, she says. Remain with her, on this island beyond suffering. No storms, no death, no Poseidon, no loss. Only life without end. Ancient audiences would immediately recognize the weight of this offer. It is not a trap in the conventional sense. There is no force, no violence, only choice. That makes it more dangerous. Odysseus listens in silence, then looks away, because he understands the cost. Immortality without Ithaca is not victory. It is abandonment. He thinks of Penelope. Penelope, still waiting, still weaving, still holding the fragile thread of his return across years of uncertainty. He thinks of Telemachus growing older without him learning absence as inheritance. He thinks of a house that exists only in memory now. Calypso watches him carefully. She does not pressure. That restraint itself becomes part of the temptation. No urgency, no violence, only endless comfort. Some scholars interpret Calypso not as a captor, but as embodiment of desire for rest after trauma. After years of suffering, the idea of stopping entirely becomes seductive. Not death, not danger, but suspension. Odysseus begins to lose sense of time. Days blend, nights soften. He walks the shore often. The sea is visible from everywhere on the island. Always the same horizon, always unreachable. That sight matters, because even in paradise the boundary remains. One day Odysseus sits alone near the shore. Calypso joins him. She speaks gently. You think of leaving? It is not a question. He does not deny it. Silence stretches. Then she says something softer. I can keep you here. Not as threat, as promise. That distinction matters. He looks at her, and for the first time she appears not as divine certainty, but as loneliness shaped into form. Ancient myths sometimes allow gods and nymphs to feel isolation too. Immortality without shared mortality can become its own kind of exile. Odysseus understands something then. She is not his enemy, but she is not his home. He does not answer immediately, because there is no safe answer. If he stays, he loses his identity as returning king. If he leaves, he returns to suffering. Neither path is painless. This is one of the most psychologically complex moments in the entire myth. Not battle, not escape, choice without resolution. Far away beyond human awareness, the gods begin to move. On Olympus, political will shifts. Some see injustice in Odysseus's prolonged absence. Others see fate unfolding as intended. Eventually, one voice becomes decisive. Zeus sends a command. Odysseus must be released. Calypso receives the order. Her reaction is subtle. Not rage, not protest, only quiet disappointment, because even divine beings must obey higher order when decreed. She finds Odysseus again. You will leave, she says. He is silent. She offers him tools. Wood, raft, food, wine, instruction for survival. No hostility, only preparation. This is important. Even in leaving, she does not harm him. Her final gift is knowledge, not punishment. When the raft is complete, Odysseus stands at the shore one last time. The island is calm, beautiful. Still, behind him lies safety. Ahead lies the sea again. He hesitates, not because he doubts home, but because he now knows what home costs. Then he steps onto the raft, pushes away. Calypso watches from the shore. She does not follow, does not speak, only stands beneath trees as wind moves through leaves. The island slowly shrinks behind him, and once again Odysseus returns to water. But this time he is not alone in body, he is alone in choice. And somewhere beyond horizon, Poseidon watches the sea move again, not with surprise, but with recognition, because now the game enters its final stage. The man who refused forgetting is about to meet the sea one last time. The sea feels different when Odysseus leaves Calypso's island. Not calmer, not safer, but more aware, as if the water itself remembers him now. The raft crests small waves under a pale sky, fragile against the vastness surrounding it. You feel how exposed he is, no ship, no crew, no protection except wood and will. Yet even here isolation is not complete. Above the mortal world the gods are watching. On Olympus beyond clouds and time the debate has already begun. The fate of Odysseus is no longer a private matter between man and sea. It has become a question of divine balance. Some gods see justice in his suffering, others see excess. The tension is not about whether he should suffer, but how much suffering is appropriate for a man who has already lost so much. At the centre of this debate stands Zeus. His presence stabilizes disagreement, not by agreement, but by authority. Around him gather other immortals, each holding a different interpretation of Odysseus's fate. Some argue that Poseidon's punishment has already exceeded proportion. Others insist that divine insult demands prolonged correction. Among them, one voice speaks with particular clarity. Athena. She does not argue emotionally. She does not plead. She presents Odysseus not as offender but as survivor, a man who has endured enough, a man whose intelligence, loyalty and persistence have already been tested beyond ordinary mortal limits. Her position is simple. Justice must eventually include return. But Poseidon does not agree. His anger is not abstract now. It is personal, sustained and precise. The wound inflicted in the cave is still active in divine memory. Polyphemus's suffering is not forgotten. In Greek myth, divine wounds are not measured in time the way mortal wounds are. They remain present until balanced. Poseidon demands continuation, not death. Delay, erosion, loss extended across years. Zeus listens. That silence matters, because Zeus rarely reacts quickly when divine conflict involves emotional injury rather than cosmic order. This is not about law alone, it is about pride between immortals. Eventually Zeus decides. Odysseus will be allowed to return, but not freed, not safely, not without cost. The decision is framed in a way that reflects Greek mythic logic. Balance must be restored. But suffering cannot become infinite, or the world itself loses structure. Even divine punishment has limits. So the command is sent. Hermes will guide. Poseidon will no longer block passage directly, but his influence will remain embedded in the sea itself. Below, Odysseus drifts unaware of this celestial negotiation. Rain begins to form on the horizon. Not violent yet, but growing. The raft creaks under shifting wind. Waves begin to rise slightly as if responding to unseen pressure. Then the first divine intervention reaches him. A storm. Not sudden like earlier destruction. This one builds gradually. Clouds gather with unnatural coordination. The wind shifts direction multiple times in minutes. The sea loses rhythm. Becomes unstable, uncertain, alive with tension. Odysseus recognizes it instantly. Not ordinary weather. Poseidon. Again. The memory of past storms returns with brutal clarity. The Cyclopes, the shattered fleet, the winds released from Aeolus. Every prior catastrophe feels compressed into this moment. The raft lifts sharply, then drops. Water floods over him. He clings to wood as thunder rolls across the sky. Lightning fractures the horizon, and beneath the storm something else moves. Not visible, but present. Pressure. Intent. Ancient Greek sailors often describe divine storms not as random weather but as directed violence. Poseidon does not need to appear. His domain becomes his body. The raft begins to break apart. Wood groans. Rope snaps. Odysseus realizes he cannot survive this physically. So he does something unexpected. He lets go. Not surrender. Decision. He ties himself to the remains of the raft. Secures himself. Accepts motion instead of resisting it. This is crucial. Earlier Odysseus fought sea wind monsters. Now he adapts to inevitability. He stops trying to dominate conditions and instead survives within them. The storm intensifies. For hours he's thrown between waves, sky and darkness. At moments he's submerged completely. At others he's lifted high enough to see lightning spread across endless ocean like shattered fire. Then something changes. A voice. Not spoken through air. Not fully sound. More like pressure-forming meaning. A command. Let go. Odysseus hesitates. The instinct to survive resists. But exhaustion overrides instinct. He releases the broken raft. Falls into open sea. For a moment there is nothing. Only water. Only weight. Only cold. Ancient Greek imagination often placed divine turning points in such thresholds. Not land, not battle, but suspension between states of being. Then he feels it. Something beneath him. Not solid. Not living. But supporting. A figure rises through waves. Not violently, not dramatically, but steadily as if the sea itself allows her presence. Her voice is calm, almost distant. She tells him not to fear death, but not to cling to life through force. She offers instruction. Remove armor, abandon weight, swim toward land, follow the currents, and most importantly, do not resist the sea. This advice carries philosophical weight. Resistance is what has defined Odysseus's journey until now. Every catastrophe came from struggle against overwhelming force. This is the first time survival requires surrender of control. Odysseus listens, then removes armor. Each piece sinks. Bronze disappears into dark water. He becomes lighter, more vulnerable, but more capable of movement. Storm still rages, but something within him shifts. He begins to swim. Not against waves. With them, hours pass. Body weakens. Mind narrows to single-function movement. Then land appears. Not immediately safe. Cliffs. Rock. Foam crashing violently. But land nonetheless. He reaches the shore with final effort and collapses into stone and sand unconscious. The storm continues behind him, but now it is distant. Not gone. Just no longer touching him. Night falls before he wakes. When he finally opens his eyes, everything is silent. He lies on a foreign shore, alive, barely, once again, and somewhere far beyond the horizon the sea settles slowly back into itself, carrying memory of everything it has taken and everything it has returned. The shore is cold beneath Odysseus's body. Not the cold of night alone, but the deeper cold of exhaustion that settles into bone after long suffering. He lies half buried in sand and stone salt, crusted on his skin, lungs still struggling to remember how to breathe without water pressing against them. For a long time there is only silence. No waves reaching him. No wind calling his name. Even pain feels distant, as if his body belongs to someone else. Above, clouds drift slowly apart, revealing a pale and uncertain sky. He does not know how long he remains there. Time loses meaning after storms like the one that carried him here. Ancient Greek imagination often treated such moments as thresholds, not endings. Not death, not life, something in between. The gods do not always announce when punishment ends. Sometimes they simply withdraw pressure and wait to see what remains. Odysseus slowly pushes himself upright. Every movement costs effort. His hands sink into wet sand as he steadies himself. Around him, the landscape is unfamiliar rocky coast, scattered trees bent by wind, distant hills fading into mist. No sign of civilization, no smoke, no harbour. Only land that feels untouched by human order. For a moment he's uncertain whether he's escaped anything at all. Then memory returns in fragments. The storm, the voice of Ino, the command to surrender to water instead of resisting it, the breaking of the raft, the final swim. And beneath all of it, the presence he never fully saw but always felt. Poseidon. The realization does not arrive as clarity but as pressure. A sense that the sea has not forgotten him, only released him temporarily. He looks back toward the water. The ocean is calm now. Too calm. Ancient sailors feared this kind of calm more than storms. Storms are honest. Calm can hide intention. Odysseus understands something crucial in this silence. He has survived storms, monsters, enchantments, hunger, prophecy, and loss. But survival has never meant safety. It has only meant continuation. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Poseidon still exists. Not in visible form, not in immediate violence, but in the structure of the world itself. Every wave still belongs to him, every distance still shaped by his will. And now the god watches differently, not rushing, not erupting, but waiting. That is what makes this moment more dangerous than all previous trials. Because punishment that slows becomes punishment that endures. Odysseus rises fully to his feet. His body shakes slightly from exhaustion, but something inside him has changed. Not triumph, not relief, awareness. He no longer believes escape is something completed. It is something ongoing. He begins walking inland. The sand gives way to rock. Rock gives way to sparse grass. Wind moves through dry plants carrying the scent of earth rather than salt. He follows no clear path, only instinct, only survival. Above him clouds shift again, not violently, deliberately. A shadow passes across the land that is too structured to be natural. For a brief moment, Odysseus feels something like attention upon him. Not human, not mortal, observed, then gone. Ancient traditions often describe divine awareness this way, not constant, but focused like gaze, turning toward a single point in a vast world. He continues walking. Eventually exhaustion forces him to stop beneath a grove of trees. He collapses again, not from storm, but from depletion. Sleep takes him quickly, and in that sleep something different happens. Not dreams of monsters, not memories of war, but stillness. A strange heavy stillness, as if the world itself pauses to consider him. When he wakes, the air has changed. Warmer, softer. Nearby he hears voices, not hostile, not divine, human. Odysseus remains still listening. This matters. After everything, hearing human language feels almost unreal. He does not move until he understands direction. The voices belong to women, young, laughing gently. Then one voice rises above the others, clear, calm and steady. It is not afraid, it is not aggressive, it is curious. Odysseus carefully steps forward through brush until he reaches the edge of a clearing. There he sees them. A group of women washing clothes in a river sunlight reflecting off water in soft flashes. Linen garments spread across stones. Horses graze nearby. The scene is simple, peaceful, entirely ordinary, and after everything he's endured almost disorienting. One woman stands slightly apart from the others. She appears younger than the rest, yet carries herself with unusual confidence. She watches him approach, not with fear but with assessment. This is Nausicaa. Their eyes meet. For a moment neither speaks. Odysseus, hardened by storms and loss, stands before her, as something broken yet still dignified. She's surrounded by attendants and river light does not recoil. Instead, she considers him carefully, as if deciding not what he is, but what he might become. The silence between them is not hostile. It is recognition. And for the first time in a long while, Odysseus feels something unfamiliar rising beneath exhaustion. Not fear, not struggle, possibility. But even here, even in apparent safety, the presence of Poseidon is not absent. It is simply distant now, like thunder remembered after lightning has passed. The final storm has not ended the journey. It has only changed its form, because now the greatest challenge is no longer survival at sea. It is return to identity, to home, to what remains after everything has been stripped away. And Odysseus, standing in the light of a foreign shore, begins to understand that the hardest part of his journey is not escaping the sea, but being recognized again as a man who once belonged to land. The river is calm in a way Odysseus has almost forgotten exists. Not the deceptive calm of open sea before a storm, but true stillness shaped by landstone and gentle current. Water moves without violence here, brushing over smooth pebbles and weaving through reeds that bend but do not break. You stand with Odysseus at the edge of this world, still half in the memory of storms, still carrying salt in your breath and exhaustion in your bones. Behind him lies wilderness. Before him lies something different. Civilization. Not the brutal civilization of war, not the shattered order of Troy, but something softer, something intact. The women at the riverbank continue their work as if nothing has disturbed the world. Linen is washed. Fabric is spread across sun-warmed stone. Laughter rises occasionally light and unguarded. Horses graze nearby, their movements slow and peaceful. For Odysseus, this ordinary scene feels almost unreal after everything he's endured. In his mind, civilization has been burned, drowned, scattered. Yet here it remains untouched by Poseidon's wrath, unbroken by storms. He steps forward slowly, not hidden now, not fleeing, present. At his movement the women turn. There is a brief moment of stillness, natural reaction to the unknown. Some step back slightly, others freeze. But there is no scream, no panic, only attention. And then she speaks. Nausicaa. Her voice is calm, not commanding, not fearful, curious. She does not ask who he is immediately. Instead, she observes him. His torn clothing, his salt-crusted skin, the exhaustion in his posture, the way he stands as if used to standing against wind that never stops. Ancient Greek storytelling often emphasizes this moment recognition before identity. Before name, there is condition. Before story, there is survival. Odysseus knows how he must appear, not as king, not as warrior, but as ruin, and yet even in ruin something within him remains intact. Presence, intelligence, awareness. Nausicaa listens as he speaks. He does not tell everything. No one ever does at once. Instead, he shapes his words carefully. He speaks of storms, of suffering, of loss. Not in dramatic exaggeration, but in controlled fragments. The discipline of speech remains even after everything else has broken. The river continues to flow beside them. Wind moves gently through trees. The world does not react to his story. It simply continues existing. That contrast matters, because Odysseus begins to realize something subtle here. The universe is not shaped by his suffering. It moves independently. That realization is both humbling and strangely liberating. Nausicaa does not turn away from him. Instead, she makes a decision. Bring him to the city. Feed him. Clothe him. This act of hospitality is not merely kindness. In Greek culture, it is sacred law. Guest friendship is protected by Zeus himself. To welcome a stranger is to participate in divine order. To reject one is to risk divine consequence. But there is more here than law. There is intuition. Nausicaa senses something beyond appearance. Not threat, not weakness, something like importance. Odysseus follows at a distance as she leads him toward the city of the Phaeacians. The landscape changes gradually. Open fields give way to structured paths, trees become ordered groves. The sound of water recedes behind them, replaced by distant signs of settlement. As they approach, Odysseus begins to feel something unfamiliar again. Exposure. Not physical danger. Social visibility. After so long as a survivor as a man shaped by concealment and necessity, the idea of being seen by a society feels almost more frightening than monsters. The city of Scheria rises ahead. Walls gleam softly. Ships rest in harbour with unusual elegance. Everything here feels refined, almost effortless. The Phaeacians are said in myth to be expert sailors guided by divine favour rather than struggle. Odysseus watches them from a distance as he's instructed to wait. He does not yet enter the city. Instead, he's given clothing oil and food. He washes himself in the river alone. This moment is often overlooked, but it is profound. He removes the salt, the grime, the layers of storm. As water runs over him, something symbolic occurs. Not transformation into someone new, but restoration of what remains beneath survival. His body is no longer only that of a castaway. It is slowly returning to human form. When he reappears clothed and clean, the difference is striking. Not because he has become someone else, but because what was buried beneath suffering is now visible again. Still, he does not yet enter the city as Odysseus of Ithaca. He remains unnamed. That anonymity matters, because identity in this phase of the journey is fragile. He is no longer only survivor, but not yet recognized king. He exists in between. At the palace, Nausicaa's parents receive him. The king and queen of the Phaeacians observe him carefully. They do not treat him as beggar nor as threat. They treat him as mystery. And here something shifts again. For the first time since leaving Troy, Odysseus is not forced to fight, escape, or outwit immediate danger. He is asked to speak, to tell his story, to become narrative rather than action. This is critical, because myth itself begins to turn inward. Odysseus, who has survived by doing, now survives by remembering, and as he begins to speak, the entire structure of his journey reorganizes. He does not yet know it, but this is the moment where suffering becomes story, and story once spoken cannot be undone. Somewhere beyond mortal hearing, Poseidon's presence still lingers across the sea. But here on this island of calm order and listening halls, even divine rage must pause. Because now Odysseus is no longer only a man crossing the sea, he is a man being heard, and that changes everything. The hall of the Phaeacians is silent in a way that feels almost sacred. Not empty silence, but attentive silence. Torches burn along polished walls, their light reflecting off bronze and stone, turning the space into something between memory and dream. You sit with Odysseus at the centre of this listening world where every face is turned toward him, not as a stranger now, not as a castaway, but as a man whose story has become larger than his presence. He speaks, and as he speaks, time bends. He begins with Troy, not as victory but as origin, a place where identity was forged in fire before it was lost at sea. He speaks of journey, but not as movement alone. He speaks of transformation. Each name he mentions carries weight. Now Ciconan's Lotus Eaters, Cyclopes, Aeolus Laestrygonians, Circe, the descent into the house of the dead, the Sirens Scylla, and Charybdis, the cattle of the sun. Each episode rises again in the hall not as isolated events but as a chain, structure, a destiny unfolding through human error, divine pressure and unbearable endurance. The listeners do not interrupt. In Greek culture, storytelling is not entertainment alone. It is preservation. Memory given form, identity made audible. As Odysseus speaks, something subtle happens. He is no longer only the man who experienced these things. He becomes the one who contains them. Suffering transforms into narrative coherence. Chaos becomes sequence. Pain becomes meaning, even if meaning remains unresolved. At the end of his telling, silence returns. Then the king of the Phaeacians speaks. He does not judge. He does not doubt. He simply acknowledges. This man must be returned home. It is decided. A ship is prepared. Not like mortal vessels that struggle against sea and wind, but one guided by divine favour. The Phaeacians are known in myth for effortless navigation. Their ships understand direction as if the sea itself cooperates with them. Odysseus boards in silence. For the first time he does not row. He does not fight the water. He lies down as the ship moves. Sleep comes quickly. Not the sleep of exhaustion alone, but something deeper. Surrender after long resistance. The sea carries him. No storm rises. No wave attacks. No monster appears. Only movement. When he wakes, the ship is gone. He is on land. Ithaca. At first he does not move, because recognition does not arrive immediately. He sees hills, olive trees, familiar terrain, yet memory resists certainty. After so many deceptions, even home can feel like illusion. Then a voice interrupts his stillness. Not hostile, not divine, human. A young figure stands nearby. She does not recognize him. That matters more than anything else, because Odysseus, who has survived gods and monsters, is now invisible in his own land. The figure is Athena, though she appears in disguise at first, as she often does. She speaks calmly. She observes his hesitation. And then she reveals truth not all at once, but gradually, like light returning after long darkness. He is home, but not yet restored, not yet seen. Athena explains what has happened in Ithaca. Suitors have filled his house. Wealth is being consumed. Order has collapsed in his absence. Penelope remains resisting weaving and unweaving time itself. Telemachus has grown into uncertainty, searching for a father who has become legend rather than presence. Odysseus listens, and something in him tightens. Not anger alone, purpose returning. But this time it is different. Not the purpose of escape, not survival, restoration. Athena changes his appearance, not as disguise alone, but as concealment necessary for survival in a corrupted home. He becomes unrecognizable again. But this time concealment is not loss, it is strategy. He walks Ithaca as a stranger in his own land. This is the final irony of his journey. He has crossed gods, monsters, storms, death and temptation, and still must walk unnoticed through his own doorway. He meets Telemachus without revealing identity immediately. Father and son stand near each other without recognition. That moment carries a weight heavier than battle. Two lives separated not by distance but by time, suffering and absence. Recognition comes slowly, not through appearance, but through truth shared in speech. When it arrives, it does not explode. It settles. Quiet. Complete. The cycle of absence begins to close. Odysseus and Telemachus plan together. Not as mythic heroes yet, but as survivors preparing to restore balance to a broken household. The palace is no longer a symbol of rule, it is occupied territory. The return is not celebration, it is reckoning. Odysseus enters his home disguised among beggars and servants. He observes before acting. He sees corruption clearly now. He sees arrogance of suitors who consume what is not theirs. He sees disorder where order once lived. And he waits. Because timing matters more than force. Penelope remains distant from recognition yet central to everything. Her patience mirrors his endurance. Her silence mirrors his concealment. Across years of separation, they have both become survival through waiting. The final recognition will come not through appearance but through test. A bow, a challenge, a truth only he can complete. But before that moment arrives, Odysseus remains still within his own home, unseen, unnamed, observing the final shape of his suffering before it ends. And somewhere beyond the sea that once held him for so long, Poseidon's presence begins to fade, not defeated, not forgotten, but no longer central. Because the journey was never only about the sea. It was about returning to a name that could survive everything it was stripped of. Odysseus of Ithaca is no longer only a wanderer. He is about to become himself again.